The Thinking Tackle Podcast.
A tattoo on his face. So it was 90s, but yeah, he was good.
Oh, he was. A lot of people these days say, he wouldn't have beat this guy, he wouldn't have beat that guy. But I look at Tyson's career, and in the early part, the very beginning, I just watched the way he moved, and I just can't see anyone dealing with it. You know, it's all good to say, he lost this and he was like this, like later in his career, but he wasn't the same fighter throughout the whole period. His peak was so short and so small. He was like a wasp at the beginning, you know. And I watch him, and I can watch those videos on YouTube over and over again, and just think, what a monster.
Yeah, I remember that era as well. I mean, that was like Rocky IV had just came out. So you had that really big Rocky movie, and then you had this like ferocious who could have been on the Rocky movies, and he was very, very well trained as well. I mean, that's what people forget about him. He was one of the best trained fighters of that generation as well. He wasn't just he wasn't just a brawler, was he?
No, he had all the technique. He was smaller, and he was quicker. That's the thing that people don't really talk about Tyson. They just say about how hard he punched. But he was so fast, like not just with the hands, but with his body and his head movement and just the way he came in. His style has never been sort of replicated, and that's the exact reason why we're talking about him now, all these years on.
Did you see how low he used to get as well? He was like, he would have his head so low down, and then he would come up with that uppercut.
Oh yeah, the uppercuts just from the ground, just uppercuts from hell. They're just coming out of nowhere. Just what was he used to say? The objective was to put the nose bone through the brain. Like when guys are saying that, you must be worried when you're in the other corner. You
don't really want to be. Yeah. Anyway, Darrell Peck, welcome to the podcast. We are live.
We are live.
Yeah, welcome. Actually, Tobe, you got a little story about Darrell, haven't you? Didn't you share a hotel room, or were you supposed to share a hotel room?
We were, I can't remember what show it was. I think it might have been it might have been a big one. But we, so the rooms came out and who we were sharing with, and I was due to share with Darrell. But my dad at the time saw the list, snatched it out of the hand and said, "Absolutely not."
I wonder why that was.
I have no idea. But then it was quickly changed, and I ended up bunking with Adam Rooney from Guru. So that was
like the better option.
That was actually one of the first times I met Darrell, though.
You look completely shocked at that.
No, I'm not shocked at it. I'm just shows what the powers that be think of me.
I think he thinks very highly. You missed out there, Tobe, didn't you?
Yeah, I think, in some sense, I reckon I probably did.
Anyway, at the start of the show, we always ask our guests, we sound like scavengers on this podcast because we always expect a gift before we start.
Yeah.
I think you might have trumped everybody's gifts, Darrell.
Well, it's a little bit, maybe it's a little bit much, but here it is.
Thank you very much.
It's a
so
canvas.
We've got a picture here, a canvas picture.
Yes, a guy called Adam Reeve made it for me a long time ago. He works for a company called Negative Image, and he started his company doing using a few of my pictures as such, and that was one of his early ones. He gave it to me, and I think being the fish that it is, that chunky from Yateley, it was sort of the one that in a way sent me on my way. I caught that and a few others. The tackle company started calling, and you could say, or I think that it led to me probably being sitting here today. So I thought it was quite a nice. It's been in my garage for absolutely ages. Hasn't been looked after. Tyler come round, splattered loads of stuff up it, but I just thought it deserved a better place than sitting in a dusty old garage just for me looking at it. So if other people get to see it, then I'm happy.
We are very honoured, and they will. They can come in and see that picture, mate. Adam Reeve's good, actually, isn't he? He's done some pictures for, I think he's done some of Damo's pictures as well, actually. No, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you, growing up, did you mainly grow up with your mother?
Yeah, but my dad died when I was 7, so I was we certainly weren't well off as such, but always from the age of 7, been into fishing, and then lived with my mum until I was 30. So it's a long time, to be living at home, But that's just the way it is. But things were houses were expensive. Working in the tackle shop when I first left school, and then the print, and I didn't have a lot of money. But I had a lot of time to go fishing, and my mum let me use the house as a hotel, and that was that.
We've all done a bit of that, haven't we?
Yeah.
So what was fishing like for you? Was I mean, obviously not having a father around. I mean, was that some sort of way of getting? Is that your salvation? You know, to be able to get out and or were you fishing from that sort of age?
It's what you're into. You know, I've obviously as a young lad, I'm not into lots of other stuff. I've always fished a little bit until I was sort of 16, and then obviously worked in the tackle shop when I left school, and then. When I got a car, my mum didn't drive. You know, this was the real thing for me. It was like that. The van, or my first vehicle, was such a change in my life. You know, from being sort of someone that could go fishing a couple of nights a week, work Monday. I used to do Tuesday to Saturday in the tackle shop, but then to have the car and be able to fish every night after work, it just changed everything. You know, from being just the occasional angler to being almost like a lifestyle carp angler. You know, I went to work in the tackle shop at 9 o'clock in the morning. I finished in the evening. I went to the chip shop on the same parade of shops where where I worked. I'd get a battered sausage and chips for, I think it was about £1.50. I'd get 4 cans of Kronenberg, and I'd drive to the lake eating the sausage and chips on the way, and then so I'd have no food for the rest of the night. I'd cast out, drink 4 cans of beer, and come to work in the morning. You know, that was
healthy lifestyle, wasn't it?
That was my life for a few years.
Yeah, that's right. No, it sounds. I remember the first time I started. I passed my driving test, and 17 years old, and we were at Horseshoe Lake for the start of the season, and I crashed into a roundabout that night, actually. Yeah, I had my friends in the car. I was like, they were questioning whether I'd be a competent driver or not. Yeah. And I think I was driving, talking to one of them, and I drove over the top of a roundabout, didn't even see it. But I know it does. It brings that independence, doesn't it? It makes I don't know how there's a few carp anglers out there that still don't drive and are able to, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember before I had a car, I remember like getting a bed chair for Christmas, which was a big deal, and then ordering like a minibus for myself to be picked up from my mum's flat, driven to the lake. I think it was just after Christmas, so it might have been the day after Boxing Day. I went to the quarry in Chelmsford on my own, like in a minibus, and it froze up that night. So I'd gone to all the effort to get down there on a taxi, cast out. The lake's frozen up the next day, and then I've had to get another minibus to come and pick me up and. Yeah, trying to get the minibus to come up the quarry track. The quarry track was legendary, you know, of potholes.
It's quite muddy there, doesn't it?
It's muddy, but it's bumpy. That's the main thing, you know. There's been many a sump ripped off along there in over the years as such, and you know, I had sort of a bit of a thing going before I had a vehicle with the Chelmsford taxi company. They knew me because it's the guy with the fishing gear that gets dropped off up the lake. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Were you completely obsessed as soon as you started fishing?
Yeah, I'd always been really, really into it, you know. I think, like I say, with the car, you know, it just changed everything. I from the moment I got the van, I fished, I think it was 30, it was definitely over 30. I think it was 36 consecutive nights from the moment I had the keys. And I think I got the car in the August, and then by the end of the end of November, I'd only missed 4 or 5 nights. So that was where I was at. I wanted it, you know. I wanted it so badly. It just the freedom, you know. Like you come out of school, when you're at school, you're constantly being told what you got to do. You know, it was purely freedom. You know, fishing is freedom, as in you sit on your own, you do exactly what you want, why you want. And I at the time I didn't know it, but that's what I've always wanted, just to do what I want to do.
Mm. So were there other interests? Well, I mean, girlfriends and stuff like that at that time?
I've always had girlfriends. I think since I think maybe from the age of 21, I think I've had a girlfriend. I've never been sort of more than a couple of months without a girlfriend, you know, and they've all put up with fishing.
So what do you do? Lay it down to them first of all, right? Here's my photo album. This is what you're competing with.
No, just if you've always done it from the start, you know, they know no different. And I've always told them that's my passion. It's what I do. Obviously, there's been sacrifices, you know. Like in the earlier girlfriends, they never got any holidays. I used to use all of my annual leave to go fishing, and they suffered it, you know. But my wife as such, she's pretty good. She knows that it's sort of indirectly pays the bills. You know, it's what I do. She's never had it any other way, and she's got a mum and dad close that sort of help with the kids. So, yeah, I do spend an awful amount of time away from home, but I don't think we'd get on as well as we do if I was there all the time. You know, I'm a bit feral. You know, I spend so much time outside that when I'm home for extended periods of time, I start climbing the walls and I don't feel right. You know, I spend a lot of time on my own, and I like it that way, you know. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. No, but like I say, I mean, it's she's grown to understand that, I'd imagine, over the years, and that's what makes you tick. Yeah, no, she knows who I am. There's no hiding that. You know, we're comfortable in our relationship, and it is what it is. You know, so I think she'd like me to be around a little bit more for the kids. You know, and I am doing that now. You know, the last few years, I'd say since 2014, I've done a lot of European fishing, not just for work, but in my own time, you know. So when I've come home, I've been doing longer sessions abroad and stuff like that. And I think realistically, that's got to probably change now, you know. Now I've got 2 kids, another one coming. I think that I'll probably start fishing in England a little bit more for my own fishing. So it's rather than a week, 10-day sessions, it'll be 3 nights, you know, and then I'm home for more and I'm not away from the family as much. You've just joined Wellington as well, hasn't it? This is your first season on Wellington Park. A little bit different for you, isn't it, Darrell? Yeah, it's. I didn't even put my name down myself. You know, it's a funny old thing. I worked on the Carp Fest events for Korda many years ago, and worked with a guy called Dave Fuidge, and he was on. I think he was on Welly, or he was friends with someone on Welly, and we talked about it quite a lot at the time. And Welly was really sort of peaking around that sort of time, and. He said one day, just I put your name on the waiting list, and I was like, "Did you?" Like, "Oh, mate, that's, yeah, cool, mate, fair enough." Like, and then a few years back, the phone rang. It was a girl from the office saying, "Right, you're quite high near the top of the list. If there was a ticket available, would you take it?" And I said, "Yeah, no, I would. You know, I would take it." At the time, there was like 20 odd 50s in there. It was like absolutely obscene. And then it never materialised, and not a lot of them, say 10 or 12 of them died. I think there's 9 different 50s in there at the minute. But the ticket came, and I thought it seems stupid to have been on the waiting list 10 years and not take it. You know, and I knew this year I didn't have the time. I had my work schedule, filming schedule this year has been absolutely obscene. You know, since May I've only been fishing free, and May till September I've only been fishing 3 times for myself, which people probably don't realise. You know, like, I'm fishing, but on camera, so I've not actually had much free time. And to spend £2,000 on a ticket that you're not going to use is pretty crazy. But yeah, I've just started consistently putting a few sessions together now. We're in early October, and I've not had any work since the middle of September. So I've done, I think, 3 or 4 weeks on the spin. I've done 3 nights, and it's so different. Like you say, it's like a gentleman's club. You know, when I fished big fish waters in the UK previously, there's definitely that atmosphere of, obviously there's a lot of carpiness and all that sort of rubbish, but there's that atmosphere of competitiveness, everyone's trying to get to the same one thing, people not trying to help each other, and damn well it's just so laid back. You know, I was going to say, how do you struggle getting tickets on some lakes just because of your profile? Yeah, definitely. You know, like as Danny said in that first podcast, when you're on your way up a little bit, people they seem to want to help you when you're new kid on the block, and so it definitely in the early days opened up some doors. You know, when I first sort of caught those ones from Yateley and stuff, I've got a free gold card from RMC just to promote their waters. You know, just because I'd caught a few fish. But in recent years, I've never really been one to put my name down for tickets. You know, because generally all the proper waters, not Cemex ones used to go on the waiting list and get in, but generally syndicates, it's a case of who you know. And I remember, like, there's a local water to here, won't name it, but I wanted a ticket on it. I knew someone that knew the guy that ran it. Said, could you see if I could, if there's any possibility for me to get on there? And when my friend rang the guy who ran the lake, another one of my friends or someone I know was with the guy at the time. So I've heard both ends of the conversation. Is, why do I want to let that on my lake? He fishes all the time, you know. So it's just it's one of them, you know. A lot of people, a lot of fishermen don't actually want to catch the fish, you know. So
if nowadays, because of my profile, if they want publicity, then I'm going to be offered a ticket maybe ahead of somebody else. But if they want to keep things quiet, then I get the opposite of it. And the trouble is, I generally want to be on the ones that are harder to get on. And so it doesn't, like if I want to go to Linear, I could get a 3 nights fishing because I can promote the lake, you know. But if I wanted a ticket on a really nice exclusive syndicate, maybe it's no publicity. They're like, why do you want one of the most followed guys in carp fishing on our lake blowing it out the water? So it's fishing, you know.
Yeah. Do you generally get well received by other anglers on lakes?
It's one of the things that has spoilt my fishing the most is people having a preconceived idea about me before they meet me, because generally whenever I'd gone anywhere as a youngster, I always got on with people, whereas especially on individual big fish waters, people's backs are up, you know. There's an element of, I hate to say it, but intimidation. They don't, like when you're trying to go for the same thing, they don't warm to you, you know, which is a real shame, because I love that camaraderie on the water when you're all getting on. You shake each other's hand when you catch one, you take the pictures for them. If someone needs to go out in the boat and you help them, I love all of that, you know. It's just, but it works both ways, you know. Obviously, there's definitely an element. Some people are fans of Korda and of us as individuals. But there's also the other sort of guys that are a little bit like, they're not warm to you, they're actually cold to you. It spoils it for me, because I just don't like any negativity, you know. It just brings down the buzz, you know. I'm fishing because I want to catch you. I'm super charged by that, you know. That's my life, chasing carp. And when someone's negative about it, it brings it down a notch and it spoils it.
It's nice on a water like that, we were saying as well, isn't it, where you're not after one fish, you know, so everybody can enjoy each other's success a little bit more as well. That's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the best thing that I've noticed. Obviously, I'm a new guy at Welly. I'm no veteran there, but everyone, I haven't felt that sort of any coldness towards me. Everyone's been warm. Everyone seems to want you to catch. Everyone's happy when you catch. And I like that, and it's made me a bit warmer to everyone. You know, obviously you go on there not knowing what you're going to be like, what it's going to be like, and yeah, I feel really good about it. I'm looking forward to doing a bit of winter on this. Now it's quietening off. You know, you're seeing the same guys most weeks, and then you build a relationship with new people, your friends, and it's all looking good.
Yeah, well, you're spending a lot of time with people, aren't you? So you want to be you want to be getting on with them, don't you, as well? That's something that always factors into my fishing. You know, I love being around the people that I'm actually on a lake with. So you've got a few fish, but the other thing is well, people can look at your social media, can't they, and assume that you're catching every night, you're catching 50-pounders and that, but it's not always like that, especially on Welly as well, isn't it? Your first session was successful. Yeah,
the first trip I went down there, I met the bailiff. It's funny. So I met him in the cafe, got me my ticket and my key and stuff, and he took me to the bailiff's hut, like where and the lodge, like where you get your unhooking mats. You've got like use their landing nets, their unhooking mats, their slings and stuff. And it's like taking me around, showing me the swims, and we got maybe a third of the way around the lake. And we walked into Bramble Bay, which is the bay where they filmed Korda underwater under there. And literally walked into this swim, and there's like a shallow gravel plateau. And literally just as my eyes sort of come onto the bottom, I could see that it was a shallow area, like a pod of 15 carp with a couple of big ghosties in it. You know, obviously they're probably the first things I saw, these big yellow light bulbs. They just went over this gravel bar like in like formation, like a big squadron of them went over this plateau. And I was just like, saw how many, I was like, 15 of them at least. Like, I was like, honestly, mate, I don't mean to be rude, but I've seen enough. I just want to get my stuff. If that's all right, I said, yeah, that's fine, mate. He didn't have to walk me any further. I got into the swim, and it almost felt too good to be true. Like, there was a few tench out there on this shallow bit, and a little bit of like flossy weed, and the tench was spawning, and that's what the sort of carp were sort of loitering around. And the wind was hacking up the opposite end, and I put my gear in the swim with the fish. But I couldn't get my head around why no one was there. That was the thing. It was like, why is no one? There's people fishing. There's 15 carp in this bay. There's no one here. What am I missing? What am I missing? So I wandered down the bank, and the first guy that I bumped into was Rob Tuff and another guy called Christian. And when I walked into the swim, Rob Tuff had a fish on the bank out of a hole in the bush, which was one of the famous swims on there. And then Christian had already caught a 45 ghosted that night, and I don't know how many that they'd caught between them, but they'd caught a few, and they were saying, "Oh, when the wind changed last night, they were out here, all started jumping, it all just started happening." And I was like, "I've just seen sort of 15 fish up in the bay," and Christian said, he said, "Yeah, the bottom's a bit rotten in there. No one's really been catching anything out there later. You want to get down here on this wind?" And I'm thinking, well, he's caught. He's a bit of a veteran of the lake. Like, I was like, yeah. I'm going to get my stuff. Like, so I'm walking off now, scratching my head, like not sure, like doubting everything. I walk back into the swim, still fish everywhere, and I was like, hang on a second, mate. You just can't ignore. You know, you got to do things your own way. You know. So I thought I'll set up in this swim. So I put my fish out, my rods out onto this shallow area out in front where the carp was sort of going over. But I'm talking really shallow, like a foot deep. And I wasn't very confident. I knew they were there, but there weren't spots that I thought, oh my God, that is going to do a bite. But so just on dark, I sort of in the evening, I put a third rod up in a tree, fresh bait on it with a spinner rig, just lent it sort of just up in the bush. And I thought, just hold one in reserve. Don't go all in yet. And literally just on like half light, like too dark for the seagulls. Like one just went about 70 yards out. Flung out this pop-up out there, got on the old throwing stick, and you know, I thought 4 foot deep. I've just sprayed a load of 20 millers all over its head. There's no chance and it just started ripping. You know, the first couple were small ones, and I just let them go. And then like just as it was getting light in the morning, I had a brace of 40s, and you think, well, welcome to Welly. You know, yeah. So 1 minute you're doubting it, you see them in the bay. 1 minute you're saying, no, they don't get caught in there. The next minute you're back there, and then I caught those 240s in the morning. I was just like, this is amazing. But like that was a sort of gave me a false sense of security round the lake. So getting back to your point, so I got lost there. I was sort of going off in what actually happened.
Yeah.
But there'd been 26 fish caught that session. 3 nights on Welly, there was 26 fish out. I thought, God, this is what Welly's all about. You know, hear everything. But that was post spawning. They were absolutely starving, and everyone around the lake was catching. Since that, you know, like most weeks I'm going now, one person's catching, maybe 2. You know, it's not 26 fish coming out around the lake. You know? So that post spawning like feed up is a great time to be on the water. You know.
So everybody was having good success, but I mean, it was you that I was hearing about. Everybody was saying, you know, especially how Darrell's just caught like 4 or 5, wasn't it?
Had 5 in
five in total, and it's like bloody hell. But yeah, like you say, you're putting a perspective on it that, you know, there was other success on the lake at the same time as well.
Yeah, a lot of people will try and like make it sound that they're the only I'm catching. Yeah. No one on the lake caught anything, but you know, that wasn't the case. I turned up at a very, very good time. Turned up into a bay with no one fishing. Landed on a red hot opportunity.
Yeah, and you've had a few blanks, but you've had a few successes since then as well. So
yeah, had a
actually, was it a few blanks?
I think I blanked my second session.
Yeah,
and in the third session, I was 2 nights in, having not caught anything, and it rained in the night. And when I say it rained chronically, like absolutely horrendously, and I remember thinking, I'm getting a bit desperate, you know. It's like 2 nights in, I've got 1 night left, I've got to make it happen. So I've reeled in quite early in the morning. There's big rivers running through my bivvy that night. It was just disgusting. And as I'm walking round, there's like the park vehicles parked up somewhere, and they're digging up the drains with a big old like shovel. And like I was like, what's going on here, guys? Like the old predator instincts. Like I'm like all heightened here. I was like, what's going on here, guys? Oh, we've got a backlog of water further up in the park, and we've got to clear the drains. And it's like, does that pipe go in the lake? And he's like, yeah, it goes in the lake. So I've like walked a little bit further, I can just hear it going. I was like, we've all read Dave Lane's book,
yeah,
where any catches
Conningbrook, yeah,
two-tone and that. So I've walked past this pipe. I walked up to this guy called Beck, really nice fella. He said, oh yeah, I had one last night. I think it was a 26-pound ghostie, and his bivvy, like his bed chair was out with his bivvy. His bivvy was still up, it was all wet, but everything else was on the barrel. I said, are you going? He's like, yeah, I'm going. I said, I'm going to get my stuff, right? Because water coming in like that, he's caught one, you know. It's like, it's on.
Success.
It's on. It's
yeah,
like, I could smell it, you know. I was like, there's an opportunity. I come back with my wheelbarrow, and he said, there's a hole over there in the trees. You can see, he said, see my lead hanging from the tree there. It's where I recast at 4 a.m. That's where I caught it from. He said, like 9.5 wraps in that hole. There's sort of a gravel area sort of tight to the bank. And I was, well, I'm not going to argue with that. Fired over the marker float, went round there, baited it up quite sort of loosely with a bit of like boilie crumb and stuff, and came back cast on it. And and it was raining through the night. I could hear that pipe coming on. There was this level of intensity, where you just expectancy. A lot of the time you go to bed and you're not sure if you've got it right. And I was like, that rig's under that bush. It's on that bait. I've hand baited it like that. The trap's set. I've got my pop up out there. That water's flooding in their ear. And through the night, I think at 3 o'clock in the morning, it woke me up like a few bleeps. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, it did it again. And because it's only 9 wraps to the far side, you're sort of paranoid about your torch and stuff. And I remember I had the bivvy door closed with the light on inside, and I kept opening the thing to see if it was getting light yet. And the whole time, just like thinking, what is wrong with that rig? Have I clipped a leaf or something? Is there something? There's definitely something going on down there. Like I should have caught one. It's the final morning. Just as it started to get twilight, I thought I'll turn the light off inside the bivvy and I'll look. Literally, just as I peeled down the box, it was away. £50 common.
Wow.
So yeah, that's why you join Welly, to fish for numbers of really big fish. They're not the most sort of classic looking carp as such, and they've been caught a bit, and some of them are looking a bit tired, but there are numbers of really big fish in there. It's a beautiful place to fish, and the guys are all great.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a ticket there myself, actually, Darrell. Yeah. Is that pipe always? So is there water? When does the water stop running in there? When did they decide to stop it?
It still comes through now, but when it rains, and obviously the level of rain determines how fast it comes through. But the real thing that was the important bit was it was a backlog. So it rained extremely heavily, and it hadn't been able to come through at the pace that it needed to. So when they pulled the plug or removed the blockage, it came through, and it really came through, and that extra force disturbs more bottom, and it
does. Do you think it matters whether the water's colder or not, or
No, I just think water. There's something in a carp that comes to water. I've got a couple of stories. Like one is the match pit in Colchester. I was fishing there. I think it was January, and a massive flood, and it was coming in from a farmer's field in a corner of the lake where the fish never go, but the brown, it wasn't a pipe, it was just coming in off the field. Like I remember walking into the corner, I was thinking, I don't need to see anything. Like even though it's January, I just know that they're going to be in that cloud. And I underarmed out sort of 15 yards, and my bobbins were dancing, like literally dancing. And I caught, it was the last morning of the session, and I caught a 25-pounder or something. And then Jerry Ampton followed me in there. And when I said, I had a couple of stories when the water comes in. I can't think. The other one was when I was fishing at Fen in Cambridge. It was basically my timing could not have been any better.
It sounded pretty good on there, didn't it?
Like literally, you hear about a lake that's pretty low stock. I don't know how many. Some people said 40, some people said 70, but I think 40 is probably more realistic. They say 90 acres. I would say it's more like 60 acres, something like that. I turned up at the most amazing time. Basically, it had a massive algae bloom, killed all the weeds, and I turned up in, I think, the first week of April to what I would call a blank canvas, a completely bald lake bed.
You'd never done that before?
I don't know. I'm not really sort of someone that does at homework, but I fished April until the middle of May on there, so let's call it 6 weeks. If I'd done 6 trips, 6 3-nighters, and from the moment I walked on there, they were bouncing at long range. The weather stayed, I think at one point it stayed in the 970s for 2 weeks, which 970 is like as low as pressure as I've ever fished in, and it was like the most amazing spring, and Fen, it done more bites probably in those 6 weeks than it probably had in years previously. It was just perfect. I walked on there with my pink pop-ups, cast further than everyone else that was using the boats to place the rig, and carved up, just using 12mm pink pop-ups, casting it, showing fish, knowing that they were presented and catching them. But going back to the water thing, like in middle of May, they'd been at the far end of the pit the whole time, and then one morning they wasn't at the far end of the pit, and I was just like, why are they not jumping here? They've been jumping it every single morning. They've been at this end of the lake jumping somewhere, and just by their absence I could smell something was wrong. I was just like, why are they not here? And I went up to the other end of the lake, and the river had burst its banks, and it was coming in the lake, coming in really, really hard. And I remember looking, before I'd even seen a fish, I was like, I need to go and get my stuff right now I need to go and get my stuff. And as I went to go and get my stuff, like a pod of 20 carp just came into this coloured water. They just came from open water, just a foot below the surface, and just came into this open water. And I'll never forget, like, the opportunity was so insane, as in like I thought I was going to cast out and I was just going to catch them all in a matter of minutes. I thought this is just going to be too easy, and I caught one quickly. I caught a 39-pounder called Nemo, but they were like salmon queuing up to leave, and I think it's to do with flooding at different time of years have different effects. But I think this is only my opinion. It's got no scientific anything, but I think when you have flooding in spring, I think there's this something within a carp that wants to leave to spread its genes. I think it's just a very natural thing of a fish that lives wherever it lives. It's obviously its gene pool is only as good as is the house it lives in, and when you have the opportunity to leave that in the spring, I don't know if it's that, but I have a feeling that it could be that. And they just
because they disappeared out of there, didn't they? In the end,
yeah.
Was that very long after you had those? It
was at the end of that 6 weeks. So
that was it.
Like I was there as the water came in. Like at the end, it was like my last night of a free nighter or something that I caught those fish, and the water was coming in. It was coming up fast, and then when I came back the following week, oh no! I looked at the lake. I saw the ditches around the lake, and having seen the fish where they were, like where they were all there, all the fish in the lake in this bay where the water was coming in, and then stories about people scooping them out of the ditches and stuff and putting them back in the lake. I knew they were gone. You know, I didn't even have to fish there to know that. I could just smell it. And they've been seen jumping, and there's been all of this since. And there are a handful of the ones that I caught still in there. Most of which are ones that were put back in there. You know, so they weren't in there; they were out and then back in. And I think they're gone.
What year was that?
2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some the client and those. So where are they? Where are those fish potentially now?
Well, one of them called Black Spot, a fish I photoed for a guy called Mark Wilcox. That ended up in the lake next door called Ferry. I don't know if it ended up directly in there through floods or was transferred by anglers, but it ended up in there. The client, it remains to be seen. You know, probably gone down.
Quite distinctive, isn't it? If you catch that one, it's like, well, yeah, I recognise that.
Yeah. The trouble is you've got so many otters in that region, and like the fish, they ended up flooded into ditches and get eaten and stuff. There was a fish called the Ferry Linear that was in the lake next door, and that ended up in a ditch getting sort of eaten, like having literally, it was like it had been all chewed up, and won't go into names, but someone scooped it up, had a picture, said they caught it and put it into fen, you know, which is, you know, really, 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 really wrong, you know, and the fish ended up dying, you know, but yeah, that's what happened.
Bit of a mystery there, isn't it? Yeah, I remember some lakes that I fished with moving. I remember Manor Farm on the Linear Complex when the pipes used to come on there. They used to queue up round there. Coatwater Country Park Lake. That was another one. There was a reserve lake behind that, and you used to wait for that. You used to wait for heavy rain.
Yeah.
And once it started gushed out of there, you know, you needed to be in there first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was exciting stuff. Darrell, a lot of people to a lot of people, you appear to have the perfect life, don't you? Really, with being able to go fishing, and you know. But what would happen if you woke up one morning and you didn't want to go carp fishing anymore?
I don't know. Oh, mate, that'd be terrible. You know, because that's what I've always done. I've done it for so long. I don't really know what I would do. You know, if I couldn't go carp fishing anymore, I really don't know what I'd do. I haven't got really many other interests. You know, Do you ever wake up at night and think, crikey, everything's like leveraged towards fishing and nothing else? Or no, because
it sounds terrible saying that.
It just is. You know, like I know no different. You know, and I don't. It's not like I wish for something else. It's like I just do what I do. I've always been happy. I've always wanted this. You know, I've always wanted to work within the fishing industry. I've always wanted to fish. Ultimately, I wanted to be like a paid angler. Like I wanted to go. I wanted to just go fishing, send my pictures into Carp Talk, and that be enough for someone to pay me. But that's a pipe dream. You know, that's realistically. You know, no one's making any money out of me that way. So who's going to pay me to do that? You know, so you know, you have to have a compromise, and the compromise is that I talk on film, on camera, to sort of help promote fishing, help educate people on how to catch fish, and then I go fishing in my spare time, and that is what I do, and I love it.
Does that put a lot of demand on you though? That pressure to be able to, people expect you to go out and catch fish. Could it make you more selfish as a result of that?
Well, I'm the most selfish person in the world with my time. My wife would say that to you. You know, I'm so selfish with my time. But there is like that.
So, but not necessarily selfish as an angler, or you think you're selfish as an angler?
So yeah, I think so. I think when you're fishing really difficult lakes, you know, you have to be selfish. You know, there's an element of that. You know, you have to really sort of, you have to want it more than others. You have to, like, fish are never evenly distributed around the lake, so you have to be selfish about getting into the swims. I would say there is definitely an element of selfishness. I don't really know how to describe it, but
would you be less selfish if you weren't working, you know, within the industry and had those sort of
I think so. I don't think I'm a selfish guy at all. As in, but I say that I'm contradicting myself here. Like, I'm selfish about my fishing because I know how important it is. You know, I have to be. I know that the relevance of it. I know that location, time are so massive that I have to be like that. But I don't like it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, I know I am that way, but I don't want to be that way. But to be successful in what I do, I have to have that.
Where do you think that single-mindedness focus comes from?
It's just knowing what it takes. I think, you know, like when you've been fishing a long time and you've witnessed so many things over the years, and, you know, like fishing in a way, sort of, I worked in the print and I just went fishing for me, you know, and then obviously it's become more of a job. And then, you know, it's built and I've seen what it takes to be successful, and obviously that selfishness comes into that.
Do you see other people in your family, like, you know, with the same sort of focus as you? Have you inherited that from somewhere?
No, I don't know. I don't think so as such.
It can be something that we take for granted, though, isn't it? But I mean, you know, you assume, oh, well, just focus on that. Don't focus on anything else, and you'll be. But it's not always that easy for people just to be able to, you know. Not everybody wants to be like that. So, but it's not easy just to be able to focus on one thing, is it? And be completely dedicated like that necessarily.
No. But like, if you want to be successful at something, like I look at Dan and I wonder sometimes how he can be so many things at once. You know, like, obviously I just go fishing, I do what I do, and in between I'm a real lazy so-and-so, you know. And then I look at someone like Dan, who's like obviously a very, 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 very good angler as well, and then he's doing so many things. He's running like a multi-million-pound business. He's doing embryo. He's got other little things on the go. He's always trying to help other people. And then it sort of gives you a bit of grounding of where you're at. You know, like, I'm just a small little thing doing what I'm doing. And I think, how does he find the time in the day? And the difference is, I'm a lazy so-and-so, and he's just relentless, and he's never satisfied and always wants to do more. And I think the more that you can have that in you, and the more that you dedicate yourself to one thing, obviously the easier it is.
Yeah, it could be a great quality. It could also be a little bit restrictive, I suppose, at the same time. So what is your job for people, for the listeners? Because so obviously you're with Korda, but you're with other companies as well. How do you pay the bills?
How do I pay the bills? Well, basically, like I say, years ago I thought it was going to be through sponsorship, but it isn't that. Like, basically, I work on a day rate for Korda, so I'm working today, talking to you. I could be going to France with Danny to film an episode of Thinking Tackle for 14 days, so 14 days work. I could be filming Masterclass with Danny. It can be 8 days work. I could be standing on the stand at the Korda shows. That's a day's work for me. You know, so they're the things. It's like representing Korda, generally presenting to a camera. I think that's what you could say my job is. I'm more.
Is it all Korda at the moment then?
Yeah, well, Korda is my, like, you could say it's almost like, I don't know, maybe 75%. You know, I'll get a fee from Mainline. I get a fee from VAS to be associated with their brands as such. But like, it's not the sort of level that I'm with Korda as such. And I write a diary for Carp magazine, which I sell in to KWO, which is a Dutch company, and sell to Carpzilla in Germany. So getting paid 3 times to write one article as such. So that's how I earn money.
Yeah. So you don't need to worry about too much about where it's coming from. It's there's plenty out there for you.
Well, it's seasonal. Like going back to where we were, like I say, I fished 3 or 4 times between May and September for myself, and all the rest was work. Like literally, I've got nothing in my calendar until show season now. And normally I'd be going to Orient, doing a monster session there, or a campaign somewhere, but because my wife is due to have a baby in the next few days, I obviously knew about this earlier in the year. I was like, right, so I've got to earn my money here, and I'm not going to be doing any fishing here. So the welly ticket sort of come into its own. So I've been out to do a few sessions in the lead up in case the phone went and I had to shoot home. And obviously I'll probably do the winter on welly as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's always going to be people out there as well with you that are going to say, well, Darrell's able to do all this time and go fishing, and if I could do that, I could be just as successful as Darrell. And
they could.
But there is a little bit more to it than that, though, Darrell, isn't there?
Yeah, of course. You know, I haven't got here by, like, it's not been given to me on a plate as such, you know. There's definitely levels of fortune, as in, like, I live in Essex. I worked with Toby's dad. Well, not worked with him. I worked in a tackle shop, like in the same area as Toby's dad. We sort of spoke when I was a kid. You know, when I was 15, sort of used to swap stuff with Damien in from one tackle shop to another.
What was that? Was it Snags?
I think he worked in Snags and I worked in Bevan Tackle. And then obviously when I started catching him from Yateley, he was sort of at Korda then, and it was during Korda's rise. And as I sort of become noticed in the magazines, they sort of got onto me, and that's sort of how I'm here now, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, how much actual fishing time do you actually get for yourself at the moment then? Because when we spoke last week, I said you're a 100% angler, and you said definitely not. I mean,
no, not anymore. No, like when I worked in the print, I was probably a lot more potent than when I am now, and that's like over 10 years ago. You know, if you can fish 3 nights a week, every week on the water, you build up that information and you just have them, you know. But these days, like I say, so the beginning of May, I went to Orient for myself, like not getting paid, just going fishing for me. I think I'd done 6 or 7 nights, something like that. Might have been 8 nights, can't remember. I went directly from there to France with Danny. And we filmed, I think it was 11 days on a lake, public lake in Lyon, and it's for a thinking tackle that was going to come out later. But since then, like I've done a session in France with Derek, and I went to Orient once, and that was the only times I went fishing for myself between May and September. So the best carp months, or the easiest times of the year to catch carp, I only went fishing 3 times for me. But I was obviously fishing all the time, but in front of a camera, so I'm not complaining. But if you want to be really a successful target angler, like targeting fish, you have to have consistent time at the right times, and that is how you get it done. You know, you consistently go to the same lake, you look, you take in the information, you learn, and you apply it to your fishing, and you build and you catch. And the more you catch, the bigger that information pool comes, and the better you're fishing. Like if you can walk into a swim that you fished 3 or 4 times previously, you've seen where the fish show in that swim, you've got your wraps in your phone of where you're going to cast, then you're an efficient machine. If you walk into a swim for the first time, like most of the time when we're filming, and you know absolutely nothing, a lot of time you make mistakes, you're chucking and chancing, you know. So yeah, I'm not a full-time angler. I'm not fishing all the time for myself, but there are times when I go for long periods for myself. Like I go to France for 10 days for me, and now I'm fishing at Welly 3 nights a week until the baby comes, and I will be again afterwards. But the best time of the year, May to September, I am working my socks off. You know, I'm earning my money for 12 months of the year that's going to pay my mortgage, going to keep food in the cupboard for me and the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not quite as everybody sees it, is it? I know you've said before as well that so what's one of your sort of secret ingredients or whatever, but it's just you want to be more successful than everybody else. You just have to make sure that you want it more than everybody else. How can you kind of quantify that into fishing terms? How are you always sure that you want it more than everyone else? How can you see that in your fishing?
You just have to be like, there's an element of competitiveness in it, you know. Like, say for example, at Wellington, the gate opens at, you're allowed to come onto the fish at 5 in the morning. And I'm driving from Essex, so I'm leaving at 3 o'clock in the morning to get onto the gate to 4:45. Why do I do that? If I didn't think anybody else was going to be there, I would get there at 7 o'clock or 6:45 when it's just getting light. But I'm getting there on a Sunday, so I'm missing that time with my family. So my missus would prefer that I went on a Monday or went on a Wednesday. But I know Sunday is a great transition day, as in people are leaving, swims are coming free, and you're getting there before the normal midweek guys. So that element of, I'm not going because it suits me the best, I'm going because I think that's the best time to go, to have the best opportunity to get into the right swim and to get onto the fish. So that's one thing that I would do to push. I'm more meticulous putting my rods out than, say, some people. I'm more meticulous at looking and searching for the fish. I spend time awake in the night, I'm trying to push it. I'm not saying that I'm going 100 miles an hour all of the time. There's sometimes when I'm lazy, but one of my greatest things that I think I have is I have quite a predatory instinct, as in I can be cold, as in like I don't really know what I'm doing, but I only need to see, like I need a crumb. One crumb can match loads of pieces of the jigsaw together, and then when I have that, I know what to do because of the experience that I have. It doesn't mean that I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've got enough experience from previous captures, and I've got that desire to be looking to find these crumbs more readily than other people. So that's probably what I would say.
Are you measuring yourself against the other anglers that are on the lake at the time, or is it you're purely focused on yourself and your work rate is a little bit higher generally?
Yeah, I'm judging myself on how I perform. Like I know, like I make as many mistakes as when I get it right, and I make terrible mistakes all of the time. But a mistake has to be thought about, swept under the carpet, but remembered, as in like I got that wrong that time, and you try and do it better next time. So it's all good making mistakes, but if you can understand them and try not to make them again, that's what I'm trying to do.
Some of your captures as well seem to coincide with really, really good timing. You were talking about fend rating, but that seems to happen quite a lot with you, doesn't it? I mean, that can't be an accident.
There's been so many times, like for example, like my whole sort of breaking out as such when I caught those ones from Yateley. Apparently that season it produced more. The mirrors came out more times than ever before. Yeah. So I was lucky in that sense, So I was there then. When I fished the North Met, it was the first season of the entire spring. It'd been open in the close season. I was there then. When I was at Fendrate, it had that incredible spring. So like things like that stick in people's mind. When I fished at Rockford, for example, it was the year before it was sold. So it was 100-man. I think it was 100-man syndicate. And it was then going to be an open ticket so anyone could walk on. And I remember I had a gold card. Korda had a gold card, and I was filming a magazine series. So the gold card ended up in my possession, and I just sort of purposefully hung on to it, because I went to Rockford and I thought I'll go there for a magazine feature. And it's one of those again that I saw a situation that I could exploit, as in there'd been an algae bloom. There was zero weed in there. Most of the guys, or the guys that thought they were fishing long range, were fishing sort of 130, 140. And they'd caught, like at the time, the guy who was top rod that year had caught 9 fish. And I caught one on my first session. But I caught it 160 yards. And to catch one on your first session at 160 yards, I just thought, there's an opening here. There's.
How were you fishing at 160 yards? What sort of tackle were you using?
I had a 13-foot infinity on that session, and I'd tapered line on in, I think it was 0.33. And basically there's a swim called Peg 1, and there's a pub on the far bank. And I was in this swim, and I'd been told by one of the bailiffs that they'd been showing around 6 o'clock in the evening. So I just turned up, got in the swim, cast out anywhere, sort of just sat back. At 6 o'clock in the evening, just like he said, one showed out towards this pub. And I just wound up a full pelt. I think it took 3 casts to catch the cast well enough to get the rig out there. And it landed in line with this pub. And in the morning, I caught this ratty old 27-pounder. But I marked the line where I tracked it to feel the lead down and then gone round the sticks. I think it was 41 rod length something. So it was over 160 yards, 165 yards. And I come back the following week. literally stood on the far bank looking back across to Peg 1, and exactly on that same line. So I'm standing in the pub at my back looking across the lake. One showed exactly the same thing. And from there, I caught, I think that autumn going into winter, I caught 28 fish, which on a lake with 120 is good going, but that lake was pretty darn hard, and it was, again, I turned up at the perfect time. I managed to get that swim, turned up on a Sunday every week. Every week I'd be there Sunday in the dark. I'd march around, there'd be someone in that Peg 1. And it's not really a dumb thing to walk into someone swimming in the dark and say, can I come here behind you? So I wouldn't do that. But I would loiter on the path in the next swim to make sure no one was going to bum rush me or gazump me. And the second they poked their head out in the morning for their first pee, I'd be like, hello, mate. I suppose you're going today, are you? How are you, mate? Cheers. And then the old water bottle would go down. I'd walk round with my barra, and I was using a bait boat to put the free offerings out there. So I was driving out a bait boat 160 to 180 yards, depending on wind, how far I could get out there. And I was dumping piles of bait in the middle and casting singles out there. And I couldn't put a foot wrong. Every single session I was catching, having multiple takes and stuff. And you could go into Peg 1 now, fish at 160 yards like that, and you wouldn't do as well. It was just the timing of that situation.
But do you not think you're very good at recognising that opportunity? So if you turn up on a lake and something's changed, like at fen drayton, you're going to recognise that and think, right, I need to be fishing now.
Yeah, I can see when there's opportunity. If I can see holes in the carp's defence and the anglers. Like if anglers can't cast that far, and you can, that's the easiest way to stand out. But I don't want people to say, the only way you can have them is when you can outcast people. It's coming up with a formula for the situation. So at fen drayton, it was a bright pop-up cast, one cast in the vicinity of the fish rather than boating out long range and scaring them. Essex Manor, it was extreme mobile fishing, moving all the time. Everyone sort of was fishing over bait, waiting for them to come. And I turned up and started doing sort of super mobile chod fishing and caught loads doing that. When I fished at Sutton at Hearn, it was pre-baiting in the snags and then coming back like 2 days later and then fishing on it. It's fine seeing the weakness, seeing the hole in the defence of the carp in what other anglers aren't doing and exploiting that.
Do you think it's always that then? Do you always end up doing something that other anglers aren't doing?
Not always. I'm not but that is what I'm trying to do.
Right.
If you said what is the definition of a really good angler, it's seeing the weakness. If you're a hunter, you're a predator, and what is a predator looking for? It's looking for a weakness. When there's a gang of lions out in the Sahara, they don't attack the biggest gazelle or whatever it is, their buffalo, whatever they're trying to bring down. They pick the one with a weak leg, don't they? So it's looking to exploit the weakness of and find that opportunity.
You talked about specific times of the years as well. Do you want to just talk about why you've got certain times of the year where you really want to be out fishing and other times where you can just forget going?
Yeah, I like being on the bank early and I like being on the bank late. Obviously, the fish are in the best condition then. Pre-spawning. They haven't been caught all winter long, so everything's due out as such. The lakes are quite often bald at those times of year, so you can fish more opportunist. There's less weed in the lakes, then you can be more opportunist. The banks are quieter with people. I'm not saying I'm antisocial, but when I'm fishing, I like a bit of space to manoeuvre. And obviously, like I've already just said, most of my work is done in the warmer, the best times of year. But my own personal fishing comes just as it's getting good and just as it's fading away, and I love being on the bank at those times.
Yeah, excellent. Over the last few years, you've been working with Danny a lot more. Yeah. So, do you want to talk about that relationship a little bit and how it came about and what it's actually like to work predominantly with Danny nowadays on these films?
Yeah, well, I owe a massive thank you to Ian McMillan. Bless him, he's pretty sick at the moment. Bless him.
Our regards to Ian.
Yeah, pass our regards to Ian, but. He was sort of involved with Korda quite a lot years ago, and he went for a job with Nash, which meant he couldn't be sort of involved in our marketing projects. And Danny needed someone to go filming with him at Gigantica, and I was fishing at Essex Manor at the time with Ali, and I'd been sponsored by Korda for years, but I imagine they think Darrell only catches when he goes fishing all the time, and then sort of they saw me firsthand, sort of maybe sort of thought, we could use him more than we do use him, and I was sort of at very, very short notice, asked to go to Gigantica with Dan. And not being stupid, I'd been made redundant from the print. I was working in the tackle shop on £80 a day. I'd always want to work within the fishing industry, and it was an opportunity for me to show what I could do, and I don't mind admitting that. I went for it, I really sort of tried to showcase myself in the best possible way, and I caught a couple of 50s that session, at Gigantic. I think it was 2008, 2009, and I remember on the ferry on the way back, one of Danny's good friends, Billy the golfer, he said to me, Danny wants you to come work for him. He was really impressed with how you fished this week, blah blah blah, and but nothing happened. Sort of a bit of time went by. This was in the October, and I was still earning like 160 quid a week, working in the tackle shop 2 days a week, and I was in a bit of between a rock and hard place. I was right.
Did you think that was a bit of a rehearsal then, or didn't really?
Yeah. Well, not necessarily. I didn't know. I had no idea where it was going to go, but at that point, I still wanted to be a sponsored angler. I still dreamed that one day someone was going to pay for me to go carp fishing. I don't know where I got that silly idea. Read In Pursuit, Terry Earn's book, and just thought, I'd love to do that. Love to just go fishing and be that guy. But loads of people had that dream, but they end up sort of filtering into the fishing industry where they find their path. And like I say, I was going to go from one tackle shop to another, and I remember mentioning that to Spooner. I was speaking to Spooner on the phone. I said, I'm going to probably be moving from this tackle shop to this tackle shop.
Because Neil was in a fishing tackle shop as well.
Previously, but he was at Korda at this time. And I told Neil that I was thinking of moving. No, it's sort of half knowing that I knew that Korda wanted me in some way, sort of stretch, and then put the phone down to Neil. Dan rang me immediately and said, don't take that job, we want you, we just haven't quite worked out what we want you for, which is sort of strange. Dan, that is Dan, he sort of sees people and then he create a role around them, like what suits them best. And I did tackle shop open days. It was dire, if I'm honest. I'd turn up to a tackle shop with a tackle box, and sometimes on a good day speak to loads of people, teach them loads. They'd go away with sort of some stuff that they could use and catch. But it was more customer support for the tackle shop. It was sort of a Korda helping them. You send me in, I get to showcase to the. But there was time when I was sent, like when Korda was trying to find work for me, they would send me to like a tackle shop that's on the coast, that's 90% sea fishing, like digging ragworm, and I'll be standing there twiddling my thumbs, like thinking, I'm not earning my money here. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm getting paid, but how is this beneficial to Korda for me to be here? I'm not talking to anyone. But at the same time, I was being trained up to be like an angling coach. I did tuitions for a few years for Korda, and that was good. But you're only affecting one man, that is the thing. You're only, when you're doing a tuition, Korda were paying me, paying my fuel and stuff, so they're just paying for me to affect one guy. And really, now the stuff that I do on the videos, hopefully like influencing more and more people, and that is the name of the game.
What was your first thinking tackle?
It was the one that I filmed at Gigantic with Dan. Yeah.
It was that one.
It was a two-parter.
I remember the Sandhurst one as well. That was quite early, wasn't it? That was the first one I remember seeing you on.
Yeah, with Adam Penning. Yeah, with blanked, caught nothing.
That's right, you did,
Darrell,
didn't you?
What do you use? Boilies, just boilies, yeah.
Blame it on Adam.
Yeah, no, the funniest thing I remember about that session was Adam, so there's a guy on the other side, Spug from Mainline, he was using the bait boat, whatever, and Adam cracked off a spawn. Anyway, we didn't know it was him opposite, but he knew it was us opposite, because obviously the bailiff had gone round. It's like, Darrell and Adam Penning round there filming Thinking Tackle. Anyway, so Adam's seen this bait boat coming out from a random, and then Adam's cracked off this spawn. And matey from the other side shouted something out like, "Whee!" like this. It was hilarious. And Adam's gone, "Yeah, I should have used my bait boat, shouldn't I?" Right, like this. And then later the bailiff come round with a couple of beers with a bit of paper and elastic bands round it. "If you want to borrow my bait boat, you can, Adam. Cheers, Spug." Like it was funny.
No, did you feel comfortable doing the TV stuff straight away?
No, I don't.
Well, no one does, do they?
No, they don't. They yes, it's some people are more natural in front of in camera. You look at Adam Penning, Danny Fairbrass, Ali Hamidi, all like but they're veterans in front of the camera, you know, and the more you do it, the better you get. Obviously, some people can reach different levels, you know, like I never expect to be as charismatic as Adam Penny on camera, you know, but I can still do it better than I ever could. But it was in those early days, just having a camera on your face, you know, you're second thinking you can't think about what you're talking about properly because you're so aware of what's in your face. And the more that you can forget about the camera and just, if you're confident in what you're talking about and you can forget about the camera, or if you know what you're talking about and you can forget about the camera, right, it's really, really natural. And the more that I do it at the start of the session, or like say the start of this piece, like we've just done together, there's a little, it's there, but the camera's fading away and you're just dropping into what you do.
Yeah, do you know what I find with this? I think for the guest, they probably find this because they're talking more, so it's easier for them to get into a flow and actually, whereas the host is obviously concentrating on other things as well. So it's an interesting dynamic, really, that, isn't it? But I mean, the other thing with Korda is we've sort of created these great celebrity kind of anglers, but who seem really natural in front of the camera, but most of them have never had any training, and it's just been like yourself. It's just
learn on the job.
You learn on the job, and them having the face, you know, to kind of stick with you a little bit, really, isn't it? So what's it like working on shoot with Danny at the moment then? I mean, what's your relationship like with Danny? Because it looks like we've got Monster Carp now, and then we got the two of you. Yeah. I mean, how did that all come about?
Well, we were involved with Monster Carp, me and Dan. I think the first series we were involved with that, but I think ITV, from what I've gathered from Ali, you know, the story I was told was they wanted to keep the same three guys. Danny wasn't really interested in doing it. Danny wanted to work with me, so it was easier for them three to carry on with Monster Carp and me and Danny to do the other stuff, you know. And you know, I think together over the years, like, I would like to think that we both rubbed off on each other, you know. If I can think back, like, I fished with Dan loads of times, like on various places, but the one place that real sticks in my mind where I like Danny just seemed real shocked by like my fishing as such was when we fished in Belgium on Masterclass 2. He'd agreed to we weren't. Now we're carrying like massive entourage. We have a chef. We've got different cameramen, people picking up stills. But Masterclass 2, we turned up in Belgium, just me and Dan, with one cameraman coming down that evening. Normally, with this nowadays, we'd be filming all.
Oh, no, we keep rolling there.
He's knocked over the glass of water.
We were waiting for that one.
Just nice place there for me to knock over. Yeah. But carrying on, like it was just me and Dan travelled over in the same van. Now we wouldn't do that. Rich Stewart was coming over in the evening. We got to this 100-acre lake, and all our previous shoots had been on sort of commercial venues where you're in that swim, I'm in that swim. That's pretty much the end of it. But we were going to this lake, and we walked into a swim, fish crashing everywhere, and I'm like a cat on a hot tin roof. He told me there's only 120 fish in this lake, and if you see an activity like we were seeing, it was just like wow, we need to get the gear. And I remember I had my wheelbarrow all loaded up by Dan. Dan was like, he had pots of pop-ups and was like putting goo onto them and like shaking them and picking out leads and putting into his wheelbarrow, and I'm just standing there just like, oh my God, Dan, now, come on. Like, that's what I was just like, we need to go. There's monster carp in this lake, like huge ones. We need to get round there. Anyway, we got round there, and he said we'll flick for the swim, which I won. And there was like a big swim here and a big swim here and a half a peg here, and they were in front of the half a peg. Anyway, so I picked the right-hand swim. He was obviously gone the left-hand swim. And while I'm tackling up, they're still just crashing in front of this sort of half a swim. So I've moved my gear up into the half the swim. So it's rather than like a 100-yard cast onto these fish, it's like a 30-yard bung. Put them out. I caught a PB common within minutes of getting out, and a couple of small ones. And then Danny caught one the following morning. But the next morning, the fish had moved off. I just started moving really fast, and Dan was supposed to be cooking for all of us. And he's like, the first evening he's gone. He goes, right, I've got a lovely bit of steak here for you. It's like, and Danny's quite good at cooking a bit of steak. And he goes, where's your plate and your knife and forks? I said, I ain't got one, mate. I haven't got one. He's like, you what? Right? And so I ended up eating this steak off of a tracker bucket lid, you know, which is, you see it a little bit on social media now, but I'd never seen it at that time, you know. what I'm getting at, he was carrying all the stuff to cook for us, but the next morning I moved off, like I was just off, like I kept moving swim, and he's towing all this gear, and I just remember it blew his mind that, like, he's like, I'm weighed down with all this stuff, I'm not having that. Next time you can bring your own stuff,
Really?
I'm not having any of that.
You might have lost out.
I remember because he sort of took some stuff back to the car, we didn't end up eating that much on that session. We were sort of going without a little bit, and I went up the shop and bought some rolls and some ham and a few beers and that, and then in the afternoon we had a couple of beers and a couple of ham and cheese rolls or whatever it was, and there was a few rolls. I think there might have been 4 rolls left. Like I just bought them, I didn't really think much of it. I thought the food for the week, Dan had it, he had it covered, So when I woke up in the morning, I was a bit hungry, and I had these plain bread rolls, they're a bit stale. I was starving because Dan was in a different swim. I just ended up dunking them in a cup of tea and eating them. Anyway, Dan's rung me up like a couple of hours later, and he said, mate, have you still got those rolls? I've got a couple of eggs. I'll sort us out a bit of brekkie, mate. I was like, no, mate, I've dunked them in my cup of tea and eaten them. He was like, you what? You done what? I was like, yeah, mate, I was hungry. I just dunked them, like, I needed some fuel, mate. I just dunked these rolls in the tea. I just ate them. Like, that's sort of how I roll when I'm fishing.
Is it?
I'm not really worried, I'm just getting by, and fishing. And he's reminded me of that a few times. Like these days, we go on shoots. We've got a chef, we've got loads and loads of food, loads of beers. It's just like, it's all super, super laid on. You haven't got to think about anything. But in those earlier days, I'll never forget how shocked Dan was when I was moving and he was like carrying all these food bags and his barrow was like a big old mountain. And like, obviously our fishing has evolved, he's probably took on quite a lot from me, and I've definitely sort of used more technical rigs having fished with Dan, and I expect his tackles become more minimal and he's more mobile as a result of fishing with me. So yeah.
It's interesting, and it's interesting that because that's a far more, it's a more technical program. Do you ever watch Monster Carp now and think, I wonder how I would look on there?
Yeah, it's a totally different thing, Thinking Tackle Masterclass is very, it's aimed at learning and getting that sort of education thing across, whereas Monster Carp's more of a entertainment sort of side of things. I think Danny's much more suited to he's really
technical.
He's really passionate about giving, and the end consumer coming away and learning from his bit. And I remember how frustrated he was during the filming of Masterclass that he couldn't. It's not just not marketing, People think, it must be the marketing that he couldn't get across, but he really wants to give like the information, and because he couldn't get that across, he just didn't warm to it, And like that's in the end how me and him ended up more doing what we do, and the others doing what they're doing.
Do you guys socialise out of work very much?
Not so much anymore, to be honest. In the early days, I used to socialise a little bit. Maybe I remember going to Ibiza for Adam Penning's 40th and round to Dan's house for a few house parties. But I don't know, I don't socialise so much these days.
Darrell, the new Korda Bus series, that seems to suit you a little bit more, does it? Can you just explain that format a little bit?
Yeah, basically, like most of the filming that I've done is I'm sort of co-presenter or the second, to Dan, or whoever else I'm filming with. Whereas this is sort of a new series where it's just going to be me on my own as such, doing fishing. It's more, rather than being sort of teaching, educational, how so many turns of this, as Dan would say, and or how to do this. More about just going fishing somewhere for the excitement and just trying to work it out and catch them. So been doing that this year. We had
where have you been?
Right, so the first trip we went to a river in northern Germany, and when I had the basic information, I was a little bit scared. Like it was 80 kilometres from one end to the other end without locks, and then it joined to this like insane sized canal. And I was a bit shook up by that. When you say 80 kilometres, how are you going to walk 80 kilometres looking for fish? It's just like I was a bit shocked, but I didn't know what they knew at the time, and we had some really, really good local information. A guy called Max, a friend of one of our team guys, Bjorn, had fished this river a lot, caught a lot of fish from it, and unbeknown to me, there was obviously a lot of fish in there, and we'd sent them over some bait. A lot of time we get sticks and, this swim's been pre-baited from, and it hasn't. This time It had been, because this isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about going fishing for fun. And we sent the bait over, and it was prepped for us, and we say that in the video, And I remember getting there, like looking at it, he goes, "This is the stretch. There's some trees on the far bank. Here we are." I remember looking at it, thinking, "Well, I haven't seen anything," because I want to see something. And cast out before I'd even got the second rod sorted. I caught 36 pounder, and it went on that. We were just off. We just started catching, real 40-yard lobs to the far bank, spraying boilies by catapult for very naive fish. It was just great fun. The buzz, we had a really great time. And then after that, we went to. We had, basically, a French team gave us a few waters, and none of them really rocked it for me. The fish are important, the venues are important to me. I look at something, I've turned on or not really turned on by it, and I wasn't really turned on by what they suggested. And I'd spoken to Frank Warwick on Instagram, and he put me in touch with this guy, and he had caught, showed me about half a dozen pictures of some quite non-French looking fish in a really beautiful, really shallow lake, just absolutely smothered with lily pads, looked really wild. And I just fancied it, but I had the information was so minimal. And what I hadn't sort of factored in was the access to the water. There was loads of sort of shooting huts around it, some houses that backed onto this lake. So actually bits where you could get a wheelbarrow into the water's edge, and was very, very limited, on a big, sort of 60-acre lake, I think it was, something like that. There's very few areas you could get to the water. And on top of that, it soon became apparent that it was joint to another lake of similar size that had even less access to it. It had more houses and more shooting turrets around it. And you weren't allowed to use a boat if you didn't live on the lake. It was just walked into a swim and just kept seeing these cricket bat common swim past. When I say cricket bat, we're not talking 17, 18, 20 pounders. I'm talking 4 to 6 pounders, like sprats. And didn't see anything proper. Started fishing, caught one of these really small ones quite quickly. And I remember I was fishing out to this alcove in this lily pad just because it looked really nice. And they're putting the drone up to get me catapulting boilies out there. And while the drone's out there, he says, "What's this? Look at this." And I was like, "That looks like a proper carp to me." And literally, I took the drone in. Next time the rod's gone off, it was like this ancient common, like an absolute relic, 42 pounder. I caught it on the first evening.
That was the one you saw? You saw it?
I think we must have seen it on the drone.
Really?
I think we saw it on the drone. And at the time, if you go to a lake you've never been to before, you know nothing, and you catch a 42 pounder, which spawned out, it's probably a 50 pounder at the right time. You think, what else am I going to catch? So in the film, looking back, I didn't quite show it as much respect as I probably should have done, because the next few days I spent driving around like a psychopath catching £5 commons.
Did you?
So that's 2 shoots out the way. But so I've got 2 shoots in the bag. Caught a 40 from lovely river in Germany. Caught a lovely 40 from this lake in France, and from wild venues, so like big fish. So the next one was, I can't remember which way round it was. It was either Belgium first or Italy first, but let's just say it was Italy first. We went to Lake Bolsena. We had a few pegs reserved, but again, the information we had was pretty thin, and on a lake like that, you ain't going to see them topping all the time, you need to sort of know where they are. And we got there in the middle of the night after getting picked up from the airport. Had a right calamity. Literally, the guy, Oscar, who our Italian team guy, he'd been out and looked for some spots sort of in preparation for my arrival, and he'd found this basically, he took us out in the boat in the pitch black, and he goes, "Here it is, look, here's his H-block," and there was just like this bit of grassy weed reaching up from the top, and it was like the only bit of weed that we'd seen on the Echo. I was like, "Yeah, it looks good enough." It's middle of the night, let's throw a rod over the side here. We cut it was a calamity. Got Lewis in the camera boat, literally beaming me up with the brightest lights you've ever seen. I can't even see to drive straight, it's just pitch black. Come back in this horrendous massive arc, like the biggest noddy in the world. And I was like, "All right, guys, we've got 1 rod in the water. We'll sleep tonight. We'll sort it out tomorrow." Anyway, at 6 o'clock the next morning, that rod rips off. There's a 14 pounder, and I thought, we're going to be all right here. Do you know what I mean? If I can catch one with 1 rod in the water with a big belly of line like that. But the next 4 or 5 nights, nothing happened. Didn't see a fish, caught a few tench. And so, yeah, that shoot failed. Ultimately it was a fail, and suddenly you've got like 4 shoots in the calendar. You've got 2 in the bag, and the French one, it was sort of because we caught the big one on the first night. The sort of storyline isn't. Ideally, you catch the big one at the end. So I've come off the French one, sort of, it was okay, caught a big one, but it sort of tapered off, and then failing at Italy. And then we went to this syndicate lake in Belgium. There's big fish in there, not loads of them, but some big fish, and come away with a 16-pounder. So I had 2 consecutive failed shoots, and ultimately the buck drops with me. When I'm filming with Dan, he picks the venue. He's leading the ship. If we fail, we fail. There's no weight on my shoulders. But especially it falls with me. I'm the only one we've gone to a venue and it hasn't happened. And as a
who
result,
decides on where you're going and the whole format for each show then?
Well, obviously this is new. The buzz last year was basically we went to my syndicate lake at the time when I thought was a good time to catch one, and we caught the Coconut Common on camera. Then I went to the Kempish Canal at a good time because I'd been there before and caught the big one in there, 58-pound common. So this year, Korda have thrown load more money at it. When I say load more money, they've given me 2 cameramen, a bit more time, a bit more backing, But with the venues are sort of picked from information from team guys, and it's different. When I'm going to water that I've been to before, I know what I'm going up against. I'm ready for it, and got really lucky catching those 2 big fish. Don't get me wrong, I didn't think I was going to go to these 2 waters and catch 2 really big fish. I just thought that I could catch something from those venues at those times with a chance of a big fish. Whereas this year, the Germans have got the venue bang on. That river was absolutely perfect. The French venue that I picked, wasn't quite right, but sort of scraped by on that one capture, So that was sort of, that one fell with me. The Bolsena, Oscar hadn't fished there. He's taking information, so it's coming through various hands. We were told that the area that we had reserved would be a good bit, but the fish, ultimately, I don't think were there because there was guys left and right of us, and no one really caught anything. So ultimately, the fish we reserved to swim, and the fish wasn't there. It's no one's fault, We all tried to make it as good, the best possible scenario, but ultimately they wasn't there, and I couldn't. If it's a pond, like a 100-acre lake, I can walk around looking for them jumping, but I don't know how big Lake Bolsena is. It's absolutely obscene. You can see it from space, almost like it's ridiculous. And it's really, really deep in places and stuff. And I've got no experience on those sort of volcanic lakes. So I was finding my feet. I had 3 or 4 nights at it, and ultimately it failed. The Belgium syndicate was more sort of a type of lake that I'm familiar with, you could say.
What size was that?
I think it was. You could say it was at least 60 acres. I can't remember, but it was quite big, maybe 60 to 100, something like that. It's quite a big bracket, but quite a big lake.
What is the criteria? So what needs to, how do you agree, right, that's a wrap, that's a good program? I mean, is it like a 50-pounder or a...
Well, even like if you caught a few nice 30-pounders, and you had a good time and there was a good flow to the show, you were on the fish, you were hunting, it's like, there's a chance here, you got that momentum, if I feel that the show's got that buzz, if I'm enjoying myself and I'm in my flow, then I know it's good. Ultimately, you need fish, and fish bring the flow. But like I say, the Belgium and the Italian one failed, and for the first time ever on a shoot, I'm thinking, when at the end of the year when we have like an appraisal or these, it's good. It falls with me ultimately,
right?
Ultimately, I haven't put the meat on the deck. I've got.
So, any lessons learnt from that?
Well, yeah. For next year, I think I want to be the master of my own destiny. Is in I want to pick the venues, so I don't want to put it in anyone else's hands. I want to have a little bit of. I'll do the research. I'll do the homework. Maybe I'll go to waters I haven't been to before. But I'd like to sort of almost exclusively pick the venues. Rather I don't want to have anyone to blame. I don't want to think, they should have known more, anything like that. It should fall with me ultimately. Next year I think we basically, this year we've had 2 good ones, had 2 bad ones, decided we were going to reshoot, and the option was go back to the Belgium syndicate, But I'd seen two of the biggest fish in the lake had just been caught, like Landanu, like the Belgian Terry Hearn. He'd caught these two big fish, and once the two cherries had just been caught, and I didn't get the feeling that I had the measure of the lake. I'd been to the lake, not been successful, and it wasn't like if I went back this time and I'd done this, I'm going to mess it up. I didn't have that feeling inside. I was a bit lost as to, you know, I felt it could easily have gone the same way. We could have easily gone back with the same crew, more time, and failed again. And while we were filming Masterclass, me and Dan were in northern Germany recently, I caught wind that the venue we filmed at Ostlager See in northern Germany for Masterclass 4, I caught wind that it's under new ownership, extremely quiet, no one's really going there. And when I heard that, you know, we absolutely obliterated it when we were there the first time. I knew it wasn't going to be like that. Like that again was that scenario we were talking about timing. When we went for Masterclass 4, obviously we don't talk about it, it's directly in the shoot, but the lake had no one fishing it 2 weeks prior to we arrived there. We were the only ones on the lake for the 3 weeks, so we were fishing Monday to Friday, going home for the weekend, Monday to Friday. So we had no one boating across it, no one fishing it. But even more importantly, we had that bald canvas. The lake was like a desert. It's like maximum of 2 meters deep, absolutely like a desert. And no one has ever chucked singles at them like we do in the UK. And like that, when you align those dots, we turned up and we said in the start of the video, we've been told there's 70 to 100 fish. We caught 70 in 3 weeks. People were like, I've seen on the comments on YouTube, oh, of course there's only 70 to 100 fish. They're always bringing out that low stock rubbish, you know. I'm telling you, there's 70 to 100 fish in there,
right.
And we don't always get it right. Like I've told you, we've just failed. But when we went to Ostlager See that year, we blew it up. We nearly caught them all. So I'm thinking, well, we've done pretty well last time. I know it's not going to be the same. It's a different time of year, but I fancy my chances there. If no one's fishing there, there's no one in the way, then I fancy my chances to find 70 to 100 fish in 50 to 60 acres in 2 metres of water maximum. I fancy back myself. And I caught two. The two fish that I caught, luckily, two big ones that I caught, weren't the ones that I'd caught previously. They were fish that Danny had caught previously. And we took some. We had some gangster cameramen this time, you know, Kev Wyatt and Ben Allen, you know, yeah. And there was one particular morning, like they were still in bed, like I got up before first light, and the light's changing. I could see the light changing on the horizon, and the swim that I was in, it's the best swim that I've ever fished in the world to catch a sunrise. And there's something about that area, that region, it's like glowing pink, and I was like, guys, I think you need to get out of bed here. You're about to see something that you've never seen in your life. And they hoovered it up. They absolutely hoovered it up. I've got like for my Cartwell diary this month, I've sent them the best WE transfer file in the world. Obviously, I can't take the credit for it. You know, they're not my pictures. But I caught a couple of. I had a 44 and a 43. They're just like everyone goes wild these days for scaly carp, but there's more to a cool carp than a scaly carp, and for me the biggest attraction to a carp is its age. I like to see a good conditioned old carp, dark preferably. Scales are irrelevant, you know, scales can make them nice, don't get me wrong, but age, weathered, just cool, you know. There used to be a fish in Harrow called chop dorsal. Oh yeah, and we talked about that last week. That's the one. Yeah, and the fish that I caught, the first big one that I had, basically we started in a swim, saw a few fish showing, walked round to the next swim. As I walked into the next swim, there's a house on the far bank. This fish just came out in line with this house, and it's the same area that I caught from on Masterclass 4. I saw it sort of chest on, big old thick mirror come up. I was like, that's one of the big ones. That moved into that swim, ended up catching this fish that looked like a bit like chop dorsal. And like straight away, I think, show's in the bag. You know, show is in the bag. You know, pressure is off. You know, after 2 failed shoots. And on the final morning, I'm the only point of pressure. I'm fishing 3 rods on a spot, wanging out there 130s, crashing 4-ounce leads into 2 metres of water. Eventually, you know, fish that have seen a little bit of angling pressure and fish that haven't, they melted away. You know, they sort of backed off me and went to a part of the lake that doesn't get fished much. And we just went on the last morning. I was like, right, we can't. It's too tight round there for 4 cameramen. I said, just go around there, one guy, one camera. I said, let's let's put the cherry on the cake. Like we've got the show, but let's put the cherry in the cake. Weather was just epic for day fishing, and it's really hard to describe. But you've got sort of a swim and a reed bed to the right, and as you go along the reed bed, it sort of cuts back into a bay that, you know, there's no way of getting into this bay. You know, it's sort of almost inaccessible. And I heard them in the night, the second from last night. I could hear them lumping out on the other side of the lake. I was like, I know you're in there. So we went across there. I waded down the reeds. I'd already baited in there earlier in the week, flicked me rod in this bay, put a storm pole on the corner of the reeds, fed me line round it, went back to swim, and then came the cherry, you know, a 43-pounder on the top.
You got the cherry.
I got the cherry, yeah. So, you know, that show will be really, really good, really cool carp, really cool lake. And
when's that coming out?
The Buzz is next year. I think it will probably come out in the spring, you know, sort of coincide with people start getting out. You know, it's a motivational, sort of inspirational piece. It's no technical in there, so hopefully it's just like it'll come out and make people want to go fishing.
We should talk a little bit about Yateley, your first, because that was like the defining period in your, you know, that's what set it all off, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it definitely was. Yeah. Again, there's such an element of luck in certain things.
You always say that.
No, but there is, you know. That predatory instinct we've already talked about was already there, you know. And
were you used to? So, how old were you when you first started fishing on the Carp Lake?
21.
21. So, had you been used to going to other waters and doing pretty well for yourself prior to that?
I fished the quarry mostly. Quarry was my local venue. They say it's 30 acres these days, but I reckon they're everyone. Like, I see all these guys. It's like, I'm fishing this 128 acres. It's 80 acres. You know, it's
50 acres.
It's all the exaggerating, typical fishermen. You know, it was this big. But fished the quarry, I would say it's 20 odd acres. Had 110 fish in it. Really, really weedy, and basically honed my technical ability to be able to put it onto a small spot in a really weedy situation, and caught really well. And then from the quarry, it was the first time I started to drive for my fishing. I'd moved from the tackle shop to the print, so I could now fish rather than overnighters, fish 3-night sessions a week, 3 or 4 night sessions, and my vacation time, and fished the North Met. So that gave me sort of the bigger lake sort of experience. But ultimately, Yateley at the time was considered Champions League. You know, it was like, if you could catch them. I remember when my name came up on the list, I joined as a really good angler.
How long did you have to wait to get on there?
A year.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
It was supposed to be 5 years when I put my name down, but it came up after a year. And I put my name down drunk at a carp show, you know, probably only barely old enough to be drinking, but I'd gone to a carp show, I had a couple of pints. Suddenly my balls were twice the size as they were before, you know. And next thing I found myself putting my name. I'm not like that. I don't sort of look to the future. I'm not wired like that. But I'd gone. Only reason I put my name down is because my balls had felt a bit big, and my mate was putting his name down for Horton at the same time. I was like, "We're putting your name down for Horton. It's got to be Yateley, innit? You know, if you're going to do it, you've got to go at Yateley." And so
really down to that then,
yeah.
Being put on the spot there.
Yeah, just a couple of. It was at the Five Lakes show, so I was a couple of beers deep. My mate was putting his name down for Horton. I'm just loitering in the background. I'm like, "What are you doing, mate? Like, you should put, if you're going to do it, put it down for Yateley." Because it was at the time, it was a little while after all the big carp magazines, Rob Malin's ones with Terry Hearn and that, you know, and they were the formulation of the scene. You know, those carp were really revered. You know, like there were so few big carp back then. The carp were famous, and if you caught the carp, you become known because of that. So, like I say, I got the ticket came up, and I remember James Wilsmer, who's like a really good angler I used to fish with at the quarry. I remember him saying, he said, "Do you know how hard that is?" He's like, "Some people do 5 years and catch nothing." But
just tell the listeners how many were actually in the lake at the time.
I think the car park lake was 9 acres, 9 original mirrors, maybe 5 or 6 commons. I think there's one called the Pineapple. So
it's full of carp.
Let's call it 15, 20 fish, you know. Should we call it 16, 20 fish, something like that? In 9 acres. And if you think, I think it's like a 50-man syndicate, something like that. If you say each fish comes out twice, generally, like on an average, like some less, some more, then you're looking at, we'll call it 20, we'll call it 40 bites split between 50 guys, and then you get greedy bastards that take 10, you know, and then that doesn't leave many for many other people, does it, you know? So I knew it was going to be difficult, but when I joined, it wasn't like, I'm going to turn up and I'm going to do this and I'm going to catch them. It was just like, imagine if you caught one of them. Imagine to have one of them, those famous car park mirrors.
Which one did you want to catch the most?
The one I didn't catch, shingle scale. That was the one that I would have, if you could have asked me, that was the one I would have probably.
That came out the least as well, didn't it, single?
I don't remember. I think it was a couple of 3 times a year fish. It wasn't like ultra friendly or like didn't disappear for years or anything. But you're talking a long time ago now. We're talking, I was on there in 2003, but my whole reason for going there, me and my mate got tickets. 3 of us got a ticket at the same time. It was me, Tall Ben Connolly, and Adam Reeve, the guy from Negative Image. We all got our tickets at the same time. And for me, it was just, I wanted to catch one. Fished the spring on the North Met, and then went to Yateley. And I was doing I think the first year you could do 3 nights a week. And I was doing my 3-nighters. And when you're used to catching fish, and used to being in the best swims all the time, and suddenly you're going through the best time of year and catching nothing. At the time there was 5 guys on there that we would call proper full-time. You don't really have the full-timers as
Who were they?
Well, Terry Hearn was on there, John Mack was on there, a guy called Darren Miles was in there, and I can't remember the other guys. There were definitely those 3, but I think it was about 5 in total, and they were like leaving each other alone. So each week they would be in the same swims, and they would hand it over to a weekend guy and then take it back. But that's sort of, that people might say that's bollocks, but that's how I saw it. What it was, like every single time I was there, I never really managed to think I should have caught. Every single time when I went home, I was like, the fish never came near me. I'd just cast a marker out, find a bit of gravel, cast out my 20mm squid Scopex bottom bait on it, cat apart a few boilies around it. But I never felt like a carp come close enough for me to catch one. And I can vividly remember being in a swim called the M Works, which is a sort of really shallow swim with some shallow bars in it. And a few of the smaller fish, like the commons, used to get in there quite a bit. And they were sort of about as such, and I hadn't caught anything. I'd had a few beers, was probably on a 30-night blank, and I was feeling a bit grotty about it all. Like my inspiration or my motivation was dwindling. I just wasn't enjoying it. And I remember Terry Hearn coming around, spending a bit of time with him, had a very brief chat, sort of, and I remember saying I just weren't feeling it, not liking it, and I could see that he was pleased, like he was like,
that's another one
that's
down.
Another fly down.
Yeah.
It's just another squat out the way, like another one who doesn't quite fancy it, it's not up to it. And I remember I just went back to the North Met. My mate Ginger had been absolutely carving up over there, and really quiet the North Met was back in those days, and jumped straight into the saddle of like back on my favourite swim, bailiffs. I'll cast one on that island, one on that island. All the fish are in the out of bounds. They move out onto your baited areas, and you just catch them. Caught 3 the first night back at the North Met. I was just like this. And unbeknown to me, I think I hadn't been in contact with Tall Ben. Tall Ben had a week's holiday, and he'd gone down to do a week at Yateley. And Terry Hearn...
Just pull the mic up.
Sorry, mate. Sorry,
okay.
Terry Hearn...
Pull it towards you if you want.
Yeah, Terry Hearn had been in... the swim that he'd been fishing was the one called Trumpton's Point. He'd been in there sort of religiously, real weedy swim. Fish had been sort of in the weed the whole time, but I don't think he'd caught anything, if I'm honest. He'd done a lot of time, I wouldn't say how many nights, but a lot of time that summer without good results. And Tall Ben, like once Terry had sort of decided that it wasn't going to happen, sort of give it up, or maybe Ben even beat him down to it. I couldn't tell you what exactly happened. We're talking nearly 20 years ago. Ben slipped in there, plumbed up a bit of gravel, threw out a tiger nut, first or second night in there, had a 20-pound common. And I remember I'm down the North Met, and the information's come through to me that Ben's rung me, told me he's caught these fish, and I'm sitting at the North Met thinking, well, I've paid 400 quid or 450 quid, and that was a lot of money to me back then, a lot of money. I was like, and I'd given up with it, and to see him go and catch one, I was just like, and he still had like a long part of his week left. He's like, you should come down here. I was like, my mate Ginge, who I was doubled up with from Bailiffs at the time at North Met, he's gone, well, Darrell, you did pay 400 quid for that ticket, mate. I was like, leave off, you just want me spots. You just want to fish where I've been catching from last night. He goes, no, you should go to Yateley. So
how many nights do you think you've racked up on Yateley?
About 30.
30 nights?
Yeah, I was about to say 10 3-nighters maybe, something like that, without action. And I'd only been away a really short period of time. I'd only just dropped it in my mind. I'd just sort of, I'm done with that, I'm done with it. But Ben had caught one, and I set up next to him to suck it up, suck up like he's buzzed. He'd caught a Yateley car park fish, and that wasn't to be sniffed at. we done the night. I was in a swim called the Beach, and he was in Trumpton's. And in the morning, we're having multiple brews, as was Yateley. It was almost cool to drink more tea than someone else, you know. And,
did you feel the buzz on there? Because I love all that.
It was
really,
absolute. You know, maybe I don't get that so much now. You know, that feeling in my fishing, I'm always looking for it. It's that step up. Do you know that step up when you're that feeling of out of depth, and if you caught one, not the one, but if you just caught one, if you achieved that. That is the buzz, the best buzz for fishing from me, is to go somewhere notoriously difficult, and that first take, you know, it's just like, it's an insane buzz, that, you know.
I can imagine.
When you're doubting yourself, you know, when you ask, am I capable? You know, that was the thing at Yateley. It was like, I've caught 30 pounds. I think my PB was 37 pound at the time, something like that. I caught quite a few 30s, maybe 20 or more 30s. I couldn't tell you, but I caught, at least 30s, I would have said, a lot of 30s. But to catch a 40 or catch a Carp mirror, that was Champions League, like I said it was. And I can picture it now, drinking the tea with Ben, and just hearing the unmistakable sound of a carp, not just showing, but launching, like, echoed off.
Did that happen very often?
No, not at all.
I can imagine what that was like.
I remember leaping to the front of the swim, looking across the lake, and it came out again. Like, so this time I was looking at it when it came out the second time, and it was a flat, calm morning. People all around the lake, the bubbles were all popping on the surf. I could see these bubbles are like at least 150 yards away, or 100, at least 100, I can't remember now, but at least 100 yards away on the other side of the lake. I could see these bubbles popping. And I'm looking at the other guys, and nobody's reacting. Like my hairs are standing up, like, that swim's empty. A carp has just jumped out there, and even more so than that, one of the blank nights that I'd done in my 30 nights had been in that swim, fishing in that zone where I knew there was a lovely gravel spot along the side of this gravel bar, along the base of it. Even from the other side, I knew it was close to that spot. And I looked.
Sorry, so in your mind, if you saw one show, was that a sign that they were happy to stay there for a while?
No, it was just that a fish was there.
Yeah, a fish was there.
A fish was there.
But could they show and then end up somewhere else pretty quickly after that?
But what I was going to get to is, like, it showed, I reeled in like a psychopath. Like, I was only fishing 15 yards out, around in my two rods like a psychopath, and literally ran, like jogged, not sprinted, but jogged round and put my water butt down in the swim. And the bubbles from this show were still on the top. Like, probably took me, to wind in and get round, it took me less than 5 minutes.
Wow.
But the bubbles were still on the surface. But not just the ones from it jumping, it was still down there troughing. It was like a jacuzzi. It was like absolutely carving up. And there was these two trees on the horizon, like goalposts that were only like that far apart, sort of. And the bubbles were on this line, and they were exactly where I knew this gravel spot was. Probably, I don't know this, or I didn't know this at the time, probably somebody else had found that spot previously, fished that swim, and put some bait on it, you know, and the fish was eating it. But ultimately, I moved my gear around into the swim. And these days, being as confident or as I am, I probably would just sling on that, just absolutely get around there, sling a rig on that. But I was so in awe of the place, I was like, there's no way I'm going to get away with casting on that fish's head. So I just bivvied up and waited. And as the sun come up, the fish sort of bobbed up into the weed, and they were sort of sunbathing. And I took the opportunity when it was hot to put the float out on the spot, cast out a single 20mm bottom bait round it. I started catapulting a few freebies round it. The catapult elastic snapped, and everyone on Yateley was using bait boats, so accurate drop in and stuff. And then I started spraying boilies out there with a throwing stick, none of them going anywhere near where I'm fishing. But ultimately, the rig was exactly where it needed to be. I'd got 10 or 15 boilies out there with a catapult where they needed to be, sprayed a few around the zone, which most of the seagulls had eaten, and I was fishing. And
you thought there were a few more fish there? There wasn't just the one fish there.
No. As it got hot, that area of gravel bars to the left of the bar swim that I fished, the fish had come up onto the surface, and they were sort of swimming through the weed. They were out of the way, so I knew there was fish in my corner, but they were out of the way to get my rods in position for where they'd been feeding. Right. And the shows, the activity that I'd seen, and the bites recently had been at around 10:30 in the morning. 10:30 had been the bite time for the guys lucky enough to catch. And I remember after I got my rods out, it might have even been before, I can't remember which way, but Terry Hearn came past, and he's like, if you don't mind me asking, why are you in this swim? And I was like, I saw one jump out from the other side of the lake, and he said, I just fished it the night before last or something, or maybe 2 nights previous. He said, I said, I haven't done anything for 5 years, is that right? It hasn't done a bite for 5 years, or something silly like that. And he looked at me like, and he said,
so what was he trying to tell you there?
I don't know. He said, don't let that worry you. He said,
did he?
Yeah, he said, don't let that worry you. He said, it's been going on round here a little bit of late, And he wandered up and sat up next to me. And in the morning, the bite, it happened. I watched it unfold from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10:30 before, and I watched it and watched it and watched it. And at the time, I was smoking the extra large cigarettes. I was getting more and more anxious. I was rubbing my thighs. They were bubbling up all over me, And there was a point where I remember looking at the bubbles, looking at the direction between the trees, and trying to gauge the range and thinking, that is on me. It's not left. It's not right. It's not 1 metre too far. That is exactly where I'm fishing. And I remember suddenly a massive eruption of bubbles hit the surface, and the bobbin flew back down, but settled lower than it had been. And that indicates that the lead has been moved. And as these bubbles popped, it was clear that the fish had spooked. Either the fish had semi-hooked itself, shook off, got off the rig, or it had been caught in the line. I think I got done. I think a fish picked me up, half pricked itself, shook, flew out the swim, got away with it. But anyway, these bubbles, they popped. And then slowly, about 10 o'clock in the morning, they started again.
Right.
Started working the way to the spot. And at exactly 10:30 in the morning, they were on me again. And I'm doing the same thing, looking down the line, looking at the trees. This time, a massive patch of bubbles hit the surface, just like the last time, but this time, the spool started spinning. And it was real mad. Like, I remember playing it in, and Ben Hamilton come running round. I see him running from his swim, and him and Terry Owen walked into my swim, and they said, before I'd even got it near the edge, it's like, it's going to be chunky, mate. It's going to be chunky.
Why did they say that?
Because it was due out, and it'd been seen swimming round in amongst the bars. It had this sort of way with its tail where it used to swim between the weed and stuff.
Were the patterns on there that familiar then?
But it wasn't that fish got caught from that swim, because like I say, it'd been 5 years since it had done a bite or something. But that fish had been in that corner of the lake. It was due, and it had been been looking a bit happy, do you know what I mean? A bit like it's getting a bit excited in this zone, and that's why Tell had been in the swim before me, and why he was next to me. He wanted to catch that and Arthur, and I went on to catch. I caught both of them, which was like, for me, like Terry Owen was, or is even now to this day, is like the guy I look up to the most as such. And to have caught your first 40 with him in the next peg, and I caught the 2 fish that he was after. It's not like one over on him, but it was really special,
Well, you knew you're doing something right then, don't you?
Ultimately, after that period, I knew that I could catch them. Like before, I said that it was about going to a lake and wondering if you could catch there. Whereas from that moment on, I knew that I could probably catch from anywhere if I applied myself. Because carp fishing is a very, very basic thing, isn't it? It's put a bait where they can get it where they want it, and if you can align those dots, you catch them.
Were the scenarios similar when you caught the other fish? So did you end up catching, what didn't you catch out of there?
I caught 7 of the 9 mirrors, so I didn't catch the baby orange, and I didn't catch single scale, or big, was it single scale?
Single scale.
Yeah, I didn't catch that, but I caught Heather, I caught Arthur, I caught Chunky, I caught the big orange twice, I caught Pearly Tail, I caught Uglo. I think that's all of them. I caught the dustbin. As well. Dustbin. Yeah. And the thing is, like I say, I blanked for 30 nights, and then I caught all of them in 30 nights. So there was Darren Miles absolutely terminated it. I don't know how many he caught more than everyone, but I was really lucky in that I only caught the mirrors. I didn't catch any commons, and I only lost one, and I only had one repeat. I did once I had that confidence of catching one, and I had a formula that I could apply, and the formula was really basic. Find a nice piece of gravel where they'd been bubbling, so not gravel anywhere, where they've been swimming, where they've been bubbling. You see the bubbling in the morning, line up where they've been bubbling, get that marker float onto that bit of gravel where they'd been polishing, get my rig on that exactly, pult a few boilies around it, and I just become a little bit more competitive with getting in the swims. Before I let the more experienced older guys, I let them sort of have what they wanted, whereas once I'd drawn blood and I knew what I had to do, I was driving down at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was. I was making sure that I got that swim, and
Well, the other anglers look at you differently then as well, don't they? I think.
Well, I thought that was so funny. Is in that I remember how I was treated like a kid. I was relatively young, and I was treated like I was exceptionally lucky. And by the end of it, I think it was too late. I've been and gone and caught, and I think, people. We were talking about this now. People like often when I'm doing stuff like this, people ask me about Yateley because that's sort of how I came to be sort of in the industry. But they talk about it because it's just like bosh, and I didn't turn up. It wasn't like I saw an opportunity, done something like because I thought it was wildly different. It's
what you saw.
I saw the fish feeding. I put my presentation, which was just a bottom bait, out where they were, and I caught them. And that is as simple as carp fishing is.
Was that so? All this bubbling then? I mean, was that a sign on that lake? Right. Okay, we're going to stay on this spot for a while until we end up getting caught.
Well, I don't think they were thinking we're going to do it until we end up.
I know,
caught,
but in reality, that's what happened.
Game away. They'd swim. You'd see them swimming around up with dogs, like dogs with their backs out of the water, just up and down the edge of the weed beds. But in the morning, when you couldn't see them,
was it rare for them to do that though? Did you have to wait quite a while to actually be in those positions?
Because it was a very sheltered lake. The wind didn't hit it very well, and they did bubble a lot. And if you were super tuned to where they were bubbling, and then you were super aggressive, as in getting into the swim. I don't mean aggressive as in forcing people out of swims, but you made sure you were there first. You beat people. That you knew what time people were coming down. You got there first. You reserved the swim, and that was the way it was done. It was gentlemanly, as in like first come, water bottle goes in, you're in the swim, And I was young. I was super keen, and once I tasted blood and I knew that I could catch them, I just made sure that I got in the swims at the right times and I lined the dots and I caught them. It was no rocket science, no superhero angling. I watched where they bubbled. I meticulously plumbed the gravel. I made sure I got my rig on there. I didn't drop tight clusters of bait. I fished bottom baits, big ones, 20 millers, catapulted my bait out loosely. And when the opportunity was there, that I caught them.
You'd think it'd be that easy for everybody else to see that as well, wouldn't you? Or were other anglers kind of looking at that as well on there?
They just thought I was lucky.
Did they?
Look at that idiot casting out a 3-ounce pair.
That's what they thought.
And 20 mil bottom bait. He should be on a tiger nut and a pinch of hemp, or he should be on a hinge stiff rig. Look at his rig; it's got no shrink tube on it, and they were so caught up in how basic and straightforward that I was doing, or how lucky I apparently was, that they couldn't see the wood for the trees.
Wasn't it Gaz Ferrum's story about catching heather as well, that he was sat there watching everybody do that for ages and thinking, I'm just going to put a load of bait on a spot, do something completely, and then ended up catching heather, I think.
Yeah, I think the thing to look at Yateley is it's full of fish, not carp, but it's full of fish.
I was going to say with the bubbling, sorry Darrell, I was going to say with the bubbling as well, because distinguishing between carp and the lake venting and that was quite easy to distinguish.
Yeah, I think with experience, what's what.
You're looking for that sheeting, or
sheeting's a good, like a fish flanking. It's a good way to know that it's definitely carp, but you could tell when it was cut. I don't know how to describe it to you, but there was definitely a difference between tench and carp. And if you then got the sheeting in amongst it, and the carp were present, as in like bow waving through the weed beds, they come up off the spot. It's only shallow, like 4 or 5 foot on some of the spots. They come up off the spot and they'd rise up over the weed beds, and like backs would be sort of they'd be bow waving and stuff. So you could see them come off the spot at times and then come back to the spot. So you knew it was carp.
You caught 4 the first year season.
Yes, I think 4 the first season, and then I think it was 4 or 5 the second. So first season I caught Chunky, Arthur, Dustbin, and Uglo, and then the following season I caught Big Orange first, then Pearly Tail, then the Big Orange again, then Arthur. Then Heather. Sorry, then Arthur. Heather, yeah.
Heather was the last one.
Yeah, it was the last one that I caught before I sort of pulled off as such.
Was that after Heather you thought, right, okay, that's
just the chances of repeat captures were high,
right?
And also, people, but I slipped under the radar early doors. People were not defensive against my getting there early and stuff. They couldn't see me for the noddy. He's just a new kid. What's he know? Who's he? And I just didn't. I seemed to slip under the radar a little bit. Whereas once I caught a few, I definitely felt like people were onto what I was doing and trying to react around what I might do. And I had a little bit of like beef at the end, like I remember there was sort of a bailiff had slept in the car park, and he'd done that in order to. It was 2 nights the second season. You could only do 2 nights, so he'd come down a night early, sleep in the car park, having reserved a swim to get into it the next day, which was sort of, if you were there first, you were waiting to go in that swim, you were going to do 2 nights in a good swim, and it just meant not wasting a night in a naff one to get into a good one. So the bailiffs have been doing that, or some of the bailiffs have been doing that, and then I done that, and they were like, "Oh no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that." And once I felt like they were taking advantage of their situation, I was like, I've caught 7 of 9. Chances of repeat captures are what they are. I miss my friends as well. At the time, I used to fish all the time with my pals at the north, like mate Ginge, mate Phil, mate Danny Webb. I used to fish with them all the time. Like we were like a gang of guys that would just go on to our lakes and fish. And I missed fishing with them. I missed and I wanted to revel in my glory a little bit. I'd gone to Yateley and I'd caught them. And I went back with my pals and drinking beers, fishing, telling the stories of when I went to Yateley and caught them under Terry Ann's nose.
Legendary stuff, isn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
It was what it was.
There was one fish that you haven't caught that springs to mind, Burghfield Common.
Yeah.
What happened there, and what made you? Because you don't normally seem the sort of guy that's going to think, right now that fish has got me, I'm going to leave that one.
Yeah, it was a funny old thing, really. So I've known about the Burghfield Common forever. Never really thought about fishing it until I did. 2012 had probably my best ever season in carp fishing. Early 2010, 11, 12, sort of lost a little bit of the buzz for it. Wasn't quite onto the right waters. Wasn't really in it. My life I wasn't earning good money. I just was in a bit of a fishing all the time. I'm just not sure if this is for me. 2012, I was working for Korda. Things were looking up. I had an absolutely incredible season. 2013, don't even know what happened there. Again, I sort of fell out of love with fishing for it. Not fell out of love with it, but just didn't have the direction. I was working, doing a lot of tuitions. And then Burghfield went syndicate. And I thought, well, if there's going to be less guys on there, it might be the time to have a go for it. And in my mind, I thought it could be a 60, and at that time, that was bold talk. I'd seen Terry Hearn caught it at 47 spawned out. Someone else had it pre-spawning the year before at 57. But I had a feeling that it'd been a bit of time. It hadn't been out. I had a feeling it could be big. So I joined. I thought, if you can't get up for the Burghfield Common, because I was feeling I didn't have any direction. I wasn't really feeling anywhere. 2013 sort of drifted off, and it hadn't been a good year for me really. And I thought, it's the ultimate. It's the last of the Mohicans. It's the one. It's the one that. It's the ultimate. Not as in terms of, I don't think it is the most epic looking carp that's ever been by any stretch, but it's the whole scenario. It is a cool carp. It's incredibly hard to catch. It's only been caught by very few anglers, and generally by some of the most well-known in the big carp scene. So it is the last of the Mohicans of the history fish. I thought, this is probably the right time to have a go. And Dave Lane and Paul Forward got a ticket at the same time. And I remember, I know how good Dave Lane is. Never fished with him, but I'd fished with him at Monks a little bit. So I knew that he was going to be the competition as such, the main threat. And I thought, if I really apply myself and I'll do 4 nights a week through the good times, then I'll set myself up to be the favourite. And I remember I fished a couple of times in April, early April, no prior knowledge, didn't catch anything. Went on holiday for Easter, and while I was away for Easter, Paul Forward, he was to catch out of us 3, he was to catch the first one as such. I can't remember, it was a mid-30 fish. He caught it out of the sort of islandy end of the lake. And I remember I was sitting there with Mrs. I'm not really big on holidays. I only go there to keep her happy. I'm going through them. When I'm on holiday, I'm going through the motions. I'm doing my time. I'm keeping her sweet, so that I can go and be what I've got to be, when I want to be that. And I was reading Nigel Sharp's book, and the book is sort of, a lot of it's focused around Burghfield. Yeah. And I had his map out, and I read the chapter maybe 2 or 3 times while I was there, sipping a beer, Google Earth, looking at it, how many metres, just in my mind, what's what. Anyway,
we can swear, can't we, Tobe?
Yeah, I'll let you off.
Yeah.
Anyway, the first time I caught, I'd been in a swim called the Carpets, It's the last swim on the Rawlins Bank as it was, and it's surrounded. It's almost like caged off by boys. It's like completely encased in them. And I looked at these boys and I was like, even without fishing, I was like, they don't come inside these boys. They'd be absolutely mental to come this side of those boys. If they've got anything about them, these guys, they ain't coming in. And I was talking to Johnny Mack on the phone, and I think the year previous he'd had permission to fish off the Sailing Club lawn, which is like the holy ground, or it was the holy ground then. And I was talking to him, I was like, I haven't seen anything. It's like mid-April or third week in April. No, it was the last week in April. I come back from my holiday. He goes, keep your eye on the green buoy to the right. It's like the start buoy from the Sailing Club, so it's the furthest one away from where I was. Keep your eye on that. There's a bit of a hump there. They like to show there. Next morning, 3 fish showed on this green buoy, and you can't cast to it from the swim because there's a cage of buoys in the way. So there's a little gap down that sort of enables you to get past the bulk of the buoys and cast to this thing. I cast there. I never caught anything that session, but I'd seen the fish there. Johnny Macker told me they like to get there. The next time I got in that swim, I put it out on that green buoy the night before rather than putting it to fish, put it out there properly, throw and stick a few buoys around it. And first morning, like I remember it, I woke up, the alarm clock went off, it was so foggy you couldn't see anything. I woke up, put my shoes on, second I put my shoes on, that rod just it's off, right, run off, just in the fog, just absolutely gunning it, because I know there's buoys out there. I'm just like, I need to shorten this line as fast as humanly possible. Gets it in the net, it's a 40-pounder. Looked at the time, it's about 5:30 in the morning. I thought, I need to get that rod back at ASAP, absolute ASAP. Like, cut the rig in the net, back to the swim, fresh rig, whipped it out there in the fog, literally broke the net down, put it into the retention sling, weighed it. While I'm weighing it, it's off again, that same rod. And it was like, Johnny Mack has put me onto some gold here. And they were both 40s, like two 40-pounders. Like I opened my account at Burghfield with 2 40s.
That fish had carry on, Darrell.
So basically, I've opened them with that. So you'd think that first night of a free night, I'm staying in that swim. You'd think, oh no! Like, as that fog burnt off, it was the first, what I would say, hot day that I'd been on the lake, or the first proper hot day of spring, and fish just started appearing on the surface in the middle of the lake, maybe 180 yards out, 200 yards out, in 2s and 3s. But they all had one thing in common: they were all moving right to left, and as the afternoon wore on, I'm like watching more and more and more and more, and I'm like, they're going to the other end, just like Nigel Sharp said in his book. They go around the islands, and what basically happened in a very short period is I packed up, moved round. The first fish I saw was a small one. Walked round to where Nigel Sharp said the big common likes to sunbathe. Sure enough, there he was, the Burghfield Common, all on his own in a tiny little bay, no bigger than this studio really.
Because he didn't really have any open water form, did he?
Not really at the time. I know Oz had caught him out of open water, but he had a bit of form for this area, and he was there, and I was the only one that had seen him. It was my moment watching the Burghfield Common, like, coughing at the surface. And the only swim that I had any recollection or knew, I'm not really good at homework, I just generally learn on my feet, but I'd read his book. The guy that had caught it in his book out the Dogleg had caught it from a swim called the Route Nightmare, so I went in there. I remember Laney ringing me up, where are you? I said, I'm in the Dogleg. I said, yeah, I've seen 320s. I've seen 320-pounders in his phone. He said, did you see them all moving up the lake? I was like, yeah, I saw them all moving up the lake. They've definitely come to this end. Anyway, I've got my rods out to the far bank. It's like a pinch point. It's called the Dogleg. It's a small bay. It goes into a pinch, and it comes around a corner. And I'd anticipated the fish would take the far bank. Watching him as the dark light fell, he dropped deeper in the water, and I'm tracking it as it's come out of the bay. As it come around the corner, it took a sharp turn to come near side, took both my lines, and just little kick of its tail
off.
So I'm fishing in a tiny little skanky little pussy bay that's really stagnant and horrible. For that one carp, it's come through, and now I know I'm stranded. Like, I went to bed knowing I wasn't going to catch anything. But to sort of hurry this up a little bit, I think the following 2 sessions, I found it again in there, and again I was the only one that saw it. And on those 2 sessions, I caught fish in that. So I saw one carp in the Dogleg that was the Burghfield Common. I thought it looked 60 pound. It looked enormous. I caught 2 fish in this Dogleg, and I remember, like, in my head at that point, like, I'd had 3 encounters with it. I'd caught 2 fish out of the Dogleg, And Terry Hearn had said in his writing that 1 out of the Dogleg's worth 10 out the rest of the lake. You know, it's like, it is. And I thought, I need to be top rod of the Dogleg. That's he's going in there. But in the weeks that followed, he was getting seen by other anglers. And then what happens is when you've got the Common in the Dogleg sunbathing, everyone watching it, like you've just got lines everywhere and everyone's gawping at it and they can see it. It's just, it never felt right. And all of the fish that I caught that spring, I caught some off a swim called Barnets, but between the end of April to the middle of June, everything I caught was out the Dogleg or out of that green buoy. So they were my two. Like the green buoy was Johnny Mack's spot that he told me about, but I was the only one that had caught off it that year, and I think I ended up catching at least 5 or 6 out of the Dogleg, and I'd had encounters with that fish I'd caught fish from swims that fish had been caught from when that fish was in the Dogleg, and you can never say you're close in carp fishing. And I only done a really short stint, you know, from early April to middle of June, to the end of June, sorry. And it was so intense, probably one of the most intense periods of my angling. I'm the favourite here. Like I was racing Dave Lane, getting down there on a Sunday every week, beating him there, getting the peg ahead of him, putting myself in the driver's seat. And when I was fishing the Dogleg, it opened up the rest of the lake, you know, so people were catching fish around the lake, but I wasn't worried. That fish was getting in there, and all I was concerned about was catching out of there. And then I had to go to work. I'd had the whole spring off work pretty much, and I was going to Belgium with Danny to film Masterclass 2. So the first day that I've had to go to work, proper work, I remember I'm driving to Belgium, phone's gone, pull forward. I knew, it just said text message on the front, but I pressed that button, Dave Lane, Burghfield Common.
What a surprise.
And he caught it off the green buoy, you know, and I don't think he'd fished the green buoy at that point.
Because you can watch the films, can't you, on that?
Yeah, you can see it, the seagull jump on the buoy and then he gets the ripper.
Unbelievable, and what a bite that was as well.
Bite, you know, so I'm not saying he caught it off my spot or I'd been baiting it or anything, but I'd been on that fish, you know, the intensity of being on it and having being the only one that had caught off that spot previously that year. I just felt like, oh mate, oh my God, like, that could have been me, but it might. To be honest, I look at it I can be completely honest, as in like Dave, he sort of got on with the guys that run the lake and had permission to open up a new swim. So he opened up a new swim in front of this green buoy. He had a boat inflated in the swim, like he obviously casted a buoy like I would. But had I hooked that fish, I wouldn't have had the balls to have a boat pumped up in the swim because it wasn't really permitted, you know. If I'd have hooked that fish, I'd have lost it. You know,
right.
That's it. I can be honest and I can say that to you. Had that been me in the swim, I might not have hooked it. But if I had hooked it, I'd have lost it. There were too many buoys and that fish is too much of a powerhouse to deal with, you know. And that's Dave Lane, you know.
He had a string of catches around that as well, didn't he? Quite a load.
He absolutely annihilated it, you know. I've fished with many, many, many good anglers over the years, but as hunter and as predatory instinct again, he's got that. He has that. He's the most predatory angler I've ever seen. You know, he has it.
Now, definitely the best bite I've ever seen. To see that seagull on there, you almost think that's got to be staged, but it was.
And when you're using braid, you know, he gets the run, and Dave uses NAF gear. He probably hate me for saying it, but he might be Ronaldo, but he plays for Scunthorpe, and it's like his tin reels are just like whizzing off, and it's just like.
Fuck.
Oh, yeah. Like when I see, like, I've seen the whole footage of the video.
Yeah,
you know, obviously you've seen the cut versions and stuff, but like there's a bit where he goes off camera to the right, and then he comes back in the boat. The front of the boat is down where the fish is pulling so hard. The back of the boat is up in the air, and the boat just goes through the shot, and just like that fish is an animal. Like I honestly don't believe that it obviously is a bit of a funny feeder, but I think it gets lost a lot. You know, Burghfield is a very treacherous lake, really snaggy, loads of buoys, and the places where you can fish from have been changing in recent years. So there's always bits of the lake that can't really be accessed. And carp like that, they're masters of their own environment. They work out where they're not being fished for, and they come from there. If you look, Dave Lane's capture came from a brand new swim. So he opened it, caught it that day. What's his name? Caught it. Scott. What's the sticky guy? Scott Lloyd caught it. He
caught water, wasn't it?
He caught it from the compound swim. Just it been closed for a year, been all locked up. He caught it round there.
Right.
Yeah. So areas that have been closed and then reopened, or like new areas opened, produce that fish.
So where's closed on there at the moment?
I don't know. I'm not in touch with it. But that fish fights like an absolute psychopath. I think it gets lost. I believe it gets hooked more than it gets landed, and it is the last of the Mohicans. But getting to the point of why I didn't carry on with it, like my friends, like people that hold close to me, would say, "Come on, Darrell, mate, you need to catch that carp." I'm like, "You don't understand, mate. You don't just go and catch that carp. You don't. It's like most carp. I back myself. If it comes out 2 or 3 times a year, I'm going to go and catch it." But that Burghfield Common's been caught 10, 11, 30, 13 times in 30 years. The lake is littered with trouble, it ain't easy. I've got my name on the waiting list again, and I probably might have another go, but it can't have long left, it can't. But basically, Dave Lane caught it. I felt like someone had sucked my stomach out through my ball bag and out the end of my willy. Literally, I'm not saying like I didn't want him to catch it, but I felt so like the intensity of my fishing there was absolutely insane. I went to Belgium. I caught a PB Common 10 minutes after casting out with Fairbrass. I knew the Burghfield Common probably weren't going to be out for 2 years, and I was like, Dan's bought me this ticket for a 100-acre Belgian lake. Again, I saw the hull in the anglers around me and the fish's defences. No one was fishing mobile. No one was fishing long range, and I knew I wasn't going to catch the Burghfield Common, so I exploited the other option, I knew there was a chance for a PB in Belgium, and I think the lake was rumoured, that Belgium lake was said to have 120 fish in it, and I caught 57 in the time that I fished there.
This is the lake where you caught these big commons out of?
Yeah, and the big koi and stuff. And what happened is, because I caught all those big fish in Belgium, it made me realise I had time at my disposal, and I didn't have to fish 3-nighters every week. I could go and take on a lifelong ambition of mine, and that was to catch a carp from Orient. So having caught these fish in Belgium, done for 2-3 week sessions. So I'd done 2-3 week sessions away from my missus. My missus accepted that, and I asked her, could I go to Orient for 5 weeks? And my fishing has been really centred around work fishing and then going to Orient for the last few years.
So you got that out of your system then, didn't you, a little bit?
Yeah. It was an itch I needed to scratch, and it filled the hole the Burghfield Common sucked out of me. That's what it did.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, so getting onto the Orient then, who actually set your van on fire?
I don't know.
Someone didn't like you very much, did they, Darrell? I mean,
I'm not a very likeable guy, am I?
No, definitely not. No, you're right.
Fish all the time, take the best swim, catch them. You're going to get a bit of trouble.
But that's quite extreme. I know you've told that story before, but it's a great story. You floating out on the lake, flat calm. Did you have a 50-pounder or something on at the time as well? Go on, tell the story.
Yeah, so basically I went to Orient, fished 5-week session, blanked or struggled like ridiculously, fishing terribly, in hindsight, terribly. And in the final week, found the missing piece of the puzzle. Fish were there, and just started putting my foot down. Like, I'd been there 4 weeks at the time, and I was just... most people would have given up at that point. I tell you, I'd so close. I remember there was a night I'd been there a month. I'd only caught 1 carp. Paul Ford had caught 60. The weather was atrocious. It was rough. I had a night off. I left all my gear bivvied up on the point at Orient in the dark. Went to Gigantica, and it was a horrible storm. That's why I left. And sat in the back of a van with Jake Wildboar and Dovey, and drank a bottle of whiskey between us.
Didn't Dovey say to you, just pack up?
What are you doing, mate?
Yeah,
fishing's supposed to be fun, and you don't look like you're having fun. And I was like, well, fishing is different to me.
Does that spur you on a little bit then, when someone says that to you?
Yeah, like...
Do you think I got to show? I got to prove something? It's a bit like
prove it to myself. That's what I say. Where I get my buzz. That I went to Yateley because I didn't think I could do it, and I wanted to go to Orient and have a piece of that. Like, not catch them all, because you're never going to catch them all, but to take a piece of that and have that in my life. I wanted to say to myself that I'd been there and I'd overcome it. And I'd overcome the. And to be honest, the way the story went, a month suffering, had that piss up night with Dovey and Jake at Gigantica. But before that, the piss up night, I'd had a moment in the morning before that was like, something has to change here, Darrell. You know, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. And the same thing was, I'd been towing out 400 metres to where the weed stopped, waiting for the weed to stop, drop the rig down, put some bait round it, and just hauling tench. Something had to change. And that change was to go further out. And I went out with the boat, found a spot at 740 metres, which, bearing in mind I had very, very, very little boat experience of that. Fishing at 400 metres, when you've never used a boat, is a bit, you have to get your head around it a little bit, you know. Fishing at 700 metres, that's Champions League, mate. That's like, it ain't right. So it's almost immoral, you know, but, you know, when you've been there a month, you've sold your soul, you've bought everything, you've come this far, do you drop your head, pack your gear up covered in mud, go home and say it was too much, or do you go out there? So I went out 750 metres, found this plateau that was just, in hindsight, it was rock hard, it was just insane. Spent meticulously like load of time putting these H blocks and adjusting their position. Like we've had extra blocks so I could drop one, move the other one until I had them exactly where I wanted them. I donked around. It was like all the other drops previously had been mud drops, been dropping in clay, and now I was dropping. I later found out on an old barrage, there's an old lake underwater on the barrage wall of that. So I found this feature.
You called that the mother spot, didn't you?
It was the mother spot, man. I put two 8-kilo buckets of tiger nuts across it, so the two H blocks are out there, and I'm just driving on like a real low throttle just between the two floats with two scoops giving it, just throwing tiger nuts everywhere, and then wait for it to get dark. Went to Giganta, got absolutely wrecked in the back of the van. Woke up in the morning, I was like, right, pull yourself together, you've got to work out how you're going to get 800, you need 850 metres of line on your reel. So I put 300 metres of spod braid on first, and then I loaded 550 metres of 15-pound sub braid on top, and then I went out there, dropped the rig, and you'd think, so after all that time, when I got the run, I remember I can picture it now, 4 o'clock in the morning, dead to the world, it's away, and I bolted. As I sat up in bed, I've sat up so hard, but I felt something come off my head. Could have been my hood, didn't really think about it, scrambling for my waders. Got out there, realised it was the head torch. I'd already run 50 metres to the rod, and it's going put the rod in the boat. I thought, and it's hacking with wind, there's waves busting, misty rain. You could die out there, realistically, you know.
Pretty dangerous.
You could, like, and I was like, you want this so much, but you can't go out. Like, you can't go out there with a torch, mate. You can't. Like, so put the rod down in the boat, run back to the bivvy, got the torch. By the time I got sort of out there, I was gaining too much line, and the hook link had snapped. I think the fish had run down the back of the feature, managed to get enough tension on the line, and I tied a figure of 8 loop knot, which isn't a strong knot, you know, it's a convenience knot, figure of 8 loop knot, and it snapped the hook link at that thing. And but as gutted as I was, I'd burst the seal at that point. I'd made a puncture. I was in, you know, and it was like, Darrell, get back on that spot. And I've got back on that spot and just started having them. You know, I was getting one bite a night, and then I worked out that throwing feed everywhere was had a negative effect. It took longer for the fish to find the hook bait. So much like match fishing, drop the rig, donk, 3 scoops of bait directly on top of it, and that increased the speed that the fish would find the hook bait. And I was getting up to 3 fish a night. And on what I would say, the night I'd had a couple of 50s, I had a 57, a 52, but towards the last week of this trip, mega side, like diagonal wind coming into my part of the lake, like it was. I remember sitting there in the daytime with no rods in, looking at the waves busting into my zone. The sky was grey, and I'm just thinking, I just need that one, the cherry to send me on my way, you know. And
really, it was that close.
Yeah, I'd had a couple of 50s. I was happy, but you know, I knew that I was in the middle of. It was going off out there. When you have to press repeat, I was that annoying kid that had the computer game. Once I had a combination of passes in football so I could get in a position to shoot from outside the box, I would keep doing it. And if I was playing a fighting game, I had a combination of punches and kicks that once I hit you with the first one, didn't matter what you did, I was just going to keep pressing repeat. And once I had that, you know, I also had to go up to that H block and put it back on that spot. I thought, just keep fishing, and the fish that will make this session what it was going to be will come. And one night I had to take went out onto these waves. It was ridiculous. When you've got a fish at 740 metres, all you're doing is you're full tilt on the engine, your head torch on full power pointing down the line, and you're just winding as fast as you can to pick up the line and keep it tight. You're not fighting it, you're just literally going, you're winding as fast as you can, and the boat is being pulled by you and the engine as you go out there. And all suddenly the leader not come on amongst the waves. It went ding 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 ding, cut the engine, and there out in the waves 20, 30 metres away was a mouth like this sticking out of the surf, just going, oh. And I knew it was massive. Put the engine on, drove towards it, scooped it up, looked in there, it's like, that's a bloody monster, that is it. That's the carp that makes your life, makes my dream come true.
Right.
I read about it, I'd wanted to go Orient, I could go home a happy man, but as a carp angler, we're all greedy bastards, aren't we? So put it into a retainer, re-dropped the rig on the spot, came back to the swim, and been out there very long, maybe another hour, ripped off again, and it was a 57. So the 57 again was a jet black, had a massive old scar where it had been covered in, wrapped up in line. It was just a creature. And when I woke up in the morning and seeing the clouds going overhead and the two strings coming off the sack pole out in the water, and there's a 62 and a 57 there, and I'm sitting there with a 5-week beard. I've lost 25 pounds in weight. I'm run down to hell. I'm made. I'm made. So I made the phone call to Tracker. They came out to shoot a video piece to drop these fish in over the top. And I remember I went out at 5 o'clock in the morning because if you're fishing at 700 metres, you need to get your rods out of the water before the pike anglers come onto because they catch you, port you to the guards, and you're in trouble. So I've gone to reel in at 5 o'clock in the morning, and because what had happened the night before, I'd caught a 29 pounder, and during returning to the bank, leaving a rod out there, my echo sounder GPS ran out of batteries, and because it ran out of batteries, I was then blind to come back to shore. I was guessing, and when you're fishing 700 metres, if you haven't got a tight line, you're not going to get indication. So when I've gone out there at 5 o'clock in the morning, I've just got a 50 pounder on the end. I didn't even know it was there. Like, I've gone out there at 5 o'clock, and I'm playing it for quite a while. And then there's a beach sort of in the corner of the lake, and behind the beach is the car park where our vans are parked. As I'm playing this fish, I can just see this. It's like just a glow on the horizon, like a sunrise, but not a sunrise. Like this big.
It definitely wasn't a sunrise.
It's not a sunrise, and it wasn't just behind the beach in the general direction. It was behind the beach in the direction of where my car was parked, and I just. You have that feeling, you're like, I ain't sure about this fish, and the fish is just going like this, boring.
So what was more important to you at the time, the fish or the glowing in the distance?
Well, what are you going to do about it? That's like, ultimately I've got to get this fish in. So I've got the fish into the lake, and I swear to God this is true. There was explosions, like pop. I don't know if they were tyres or gas tanks. I couldn't tell you
Fuel
what they were.
tanks, yeah.
It was boom, and I'm not saying you could see fireballs, but you could see the raising of the orange haze, in the distance and stuff. I've come back to the bank, bagged up this fish, gone to Gary from Tracker, who's just come over to film a little video. And I was like, Gow. It's like kicking a dead person, mate. There's like nothing. Yeah. I was like, Gow. He's like, what? Like, a bit eggy and that. It's like, he's obviously trying to fight me, waking him up. And he's finally come to. He said, what? I said, the car's on fire. And he went, what the F am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about that? I was like, I looked at him for a split second for thinking, that's a bit out of order, but I thought, He's got a point, mate. Yeah. So I just climbed into my bed. I'd been up all night.
Did you?
Yeah, I just climbed into my bed,
right,
and went asleep, and just woke up to French voices. I thought I was hearing things, just I could hear these French voices, and it was the police. Like, I peered out, and they were wearing like shoes. They obviously worked.
Got a picture of the van, Tobe?
Yeah, let me get these up.
Yeah, quite impressive, this one, Darrell. Actually, I haven't seen any of these, so this would be a pleasant surprise. So whoever set that van on fire, do you think they were hiding behind the bushes thinking, we've done a bloody good job here, haven't we?
I did do a good job.
This thing's going up well.
I did do a good job. It was,
check this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't getting home in that.
You're going to struggle, mate, aren't you, in that? Yeah.
I mean, that's horrendous, really.
I like the paintwork on it now.
There's camo in it. It's a real tree there.
It really is, actually, isn't it? It does look. But yeah, so there were people on there that really had it in for you, then, mate.
Well, we can't guarantee, right? Like, in hindsight, we're all. I got a bit hyped up, so I caught those 2 big fish previously, the ones that made me call Gaz from Tracker to come over and film the piece, and I posted the picture of the 62 to Facebook, saying the highlight of my angling career or the pinnacle of my angling career. I posted it. So I highlighted that I was there and that I was catching. And that night, a Carp pirate boat just come out and anchored on my spot. And I also had, I wouldn't say an altercation, but when I was out placing my rod, I was going out to place my rod, and I glanced round back at my swim, and bear in mind I was on a mud point that's like 1,500 metre walk to get onto the tip on. Suddenly there was a man standing at my bivvy doorway, so I'm 500 metres from shore, glance round, and there's a man 500 in my bivvy doorway. I'm like, so I immediately spun the boat round, didn't drop the rod, came back, and he was semi-aggressive, like asking where I was fishing, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And he'd been fishing on the point behind me, and he'd been saying that I was fishing too far out to an English guy, slagging me off. Anyway, he left the lake that night, and my car was set on fire. Now, I've since got on with this guy. I've drunk tea with him, and I've even shared lunch with him. I can't be sure if it was him. I can't be sure if it was kids,
Any such incidents on there since then?
No, nothing. I parked not in the designated car park for the lake. I parked in the beach car park for the public. So it's like, imagine an open park and sort of area where kids would go and smoke doobies at night and hang out or something. So I would say it's as lot like in the French press, and the French really latched onto this.
So put that article up.
Yeah, I will.
You made the Daily Mail as well,
the
didn't you?
Mail did a piece on it as well.
Bloody hell.
They reported it as a battery fault, as in like they said I had something charging in my car that caught fire.
Well, look at this. We got this up on the screen. So we got Carp Wars. British anglers' cars are torched by jealous French rivals after £60 catch.
That's a good headline, that is.
But yeah, being real, like years on, I think it was as likely. There's no smoke without fire.
Right.
And I put that post up. I had that altercation. It happened. So I would give it 50% likelihood it was that, and 50% likelihood it'd been parked there so long the kids just set fire to it.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not going to say it was him. I'm not going to say it wasn't him. And just going to say,
good story. Though.
I've got to say, I've got one more picture here that I'm dying to show everyone as well. This is definitely my favourite.
Always go fully comp.
Look at that.
That one when the Carp Talk was a magazine. Obviously, it's discontinued.
That's not you, is
now.
it?
Yeah, that's me.
Holy shit, mate!
I'm shipwrecked.
Blood. Yeah, but your face looks more. You actually look more rounded. Your face there.
That's a big beard, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
You grow a good beard. I'll give you that.
You do, don't you?
I had 3 weeks prior to going out, and that was at the end of 5 weeks. So that's 8 weeks growth. That is.
You don't look particularly concerned there either, do you? Really, Darrell? You seem to
what
take
was going
things in
through
your
your head at
stride
that
a little
moment?
bit, don't you?
Always go fully comp.
Darrell, what was going through your head at that moment when you took that
Yeah,
picture?
always go fully calm. That's a good.
No, the biggest, like cars, some people would be bothered, but ultimately I was insured. The biggest thing was my passport was under the sun visor in the passenger side.
Yeah.
I'd left my passport in there for sake of not getting it wet. So I was not only did I have a load of fishing gear, like a 5-week session's worth of amount of equipment. If I didn't work for Korda and I didn't, Gigantica wasn't close to the lake, I could have been in a whole world of trouble there, a real world of trouble. Stranded on the lake in sort of France without a vehicle, could have been in trouble. But
Korda, they put the green light on again.
Korda sent in the team for me. Like basically what happened, the guys from Gigantica came in their big work van. It's half an hour down the road. They picked me up with all my equipment. They took me back to Gigantica, fed me, let me have a wash after that long away, and then I left some of my gear at the lake that would later come back on a van, and then they drove me to great story this. So went into Paris centre. If you've ever been into Paris, it's horrible. Driving into central Paris is disgusting. The traffic was awful, and you have to go to the British Embassy to get a passport. But there's two British. There's one for the people that lost their passports, and there's like the main government building with a couple of guys with machine guns out the front of it. And I've gone as I'm walking down the front of the building, the guys with the machine guns are looking at me. And I just remember it just felt so wrong. Like this, I knew it was the wrong place, but it said British Embassy. I had to press the buzzer, didn't I? So I pressed the buzzer, and it was like before I even spoke, like the woman come through in French accent, English. the other side of the road for the passports.
Did you still have that beard then?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, no wonder. They didn't want you in there, did they? Yeah, who's this guy?
And when I went into the passport office, I had some passport photos for me that I'd got for my membership, and they were ones of me clean shaven. So when I've walked in there with my clean shaven passport photos and this beard, looking like Bin Laden, they said to me, "Nah, mate, you've got to get in that photo booth. You've got to have your picture taken to get a passport." So I basically got a temporary passport, €130 or €120. Got this temporary passport, and then they took me. The guys from Gigantica drove me to Calais, and John Mann, who works here doing the shop fits and stuff, he came out and collected me in a van from the UK to come out to Calais, put some of my gear into his van and took me home, So yeah, Dan and Korda come to the rescue, and
like they always do, mate.
As they do, mate. So
you didn't need to keep that picture in your passport for future passports, then, did you?
No, when I handed the passport over, so it's £120 passport. It's like a cream cover. You get to customs, hand it over, just literally cheers, and it just goes behind the counter like that. It's £120 transaction just for a temporary passport.
Good cash, isn't it?
Yeah. So
that Orient fishing does. But don't you aren't you a little bit sadistic like that on yourself? Do you like the, having to sleep in mud and, just put yourself through it? Is that part of what you need to do to
No, well, I sort of go back when I said, I said like in like the early 10,000s, like 2011, 12, I had a good season in 2012, and in 13, didn't really do anything. And I was sort of lost as to what I wanted from my fishing. I didn't quite know what it was. I really needed a goal, but I was completely lost as to what that goal was. And I wanted to get away from doing whatever. There's a scene in the UK of target anglers all generated or have come about as a result of In Pursuit. It's what people do. And I'd done it for so long, I just didn't feel it anymore. I wasn't getting the same feeling from my fishing. And I wanted the opponent or the challenge to be the lake and not the fish. So I didn't want it to be ultimately because Dan, do you remember Dan saying in his podcast that he no longer wanted to target a carp. He didn't want, because then if you didn't achieve that target, then you were just
right.
It was just wrong. And sometimes you can fish really well and not catch the target fish, or someone else can catch that target fish. And in a similar way, I had similar feelings about my fishing, and I wanted the challenge to be about the lake rather than the fish had to be the sort of fish that I wanted to catch. But I didn't want to chase a fish that someone else had held. And there was so much history. Do you know, like that Yateley sort of pedigree? It had all been like, oh, you're walking in the footsteps of blah de blah who caught this. No, I wanted to go and take my own slice.
Pioneer it a little bit.
Not Orient's been fish, but go and take my own slice of pie that hadn't been, I wasn't sloppy seconds to anyone, or blah blah. I caught that last week, and I wanted to do something different. And Orient really, it motivated me because it was boat fishing. Technically casting, I'm not saying I'm the best spotter, best caster, best feature finder in a rod and line, but I feel technically proficient in that. I feel that I'm as good as I'm going to be at that, I think, really. But I'd never placed rigs with a boat. I'd never used an echo sounder. I'd never fished one of these like inland seas. And I wanted to change it up. If you do the same thing all the time, I just wanted to just go in a different direction, and for no other reason than for me.
Is that where it's going in the future with you as well?
Well, I think it's going to come back the other way now. I think, what with a young family.
Needing to be at home more.
Yeah, so rather than basing my fishing around 10-day sessions abroad, which I can only manage 3 of them a year, top whack, like outside of Korda filming obligations, in my own personal time, I can manage probably 3 of them per year if I'm being honest. I can probably do a spring one, summer one, and an autumn one, and be around enough to be a dad, But I don't think I can. Like I think it's come to the point where I need to be home every week. No, I don't need to be home every week, but because I'm away filming for Korda for weeks on end, I can't do that for my hobby as well. I can't do both. I can't be a European globetrotter in my time and in Korda's time, because that's not fair on my family. So if I'm going to be globetrotting for Korda, it means I'll be fishing in England for me.
Blimey. Well, you're getting older and more mature, and you know where your priorities are now.
Yeah, mate, I don't know what I'd do without her.
No, that's really nice. Yeah. Actually, there was a nice story as well about your mother when you caught that black mirror and you caught the fish on her birthday as well. Are you very sentimental when it comes to that sort of thing normally?
Yeah, I've got a obviously a special place for Mum because my dad died early. I only had my mum, and obviously we were not poor. I'm not saying we've been eating out guts, but we didn't have a lot, and sort of you scrape by, you get by as you do, and I always sort of was really appreciative for everything that I did have, and she always gave me everything she could. So the black mirror again was, I'll say the Dutch black mirror. It's not it's not the black
English
mirror,
one.
So,
yeah.
But I was on a boat at Orient and took some pictures for a guy. So we're out floating in mid-water, taking pictures of his camera, and at the end of it, I'm looking back at the pictures that I've took, and I've gone back one too far. I'm like, my God. There weren't no Rudy of him and his missus, but it was a carp of biblical proportions. I was just like, mate, what is that? He's like, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that. So anyway, I've later become sort of more friendly with him. And he later told me where it was. And I also saw this fish on Instagram. His pal had caught it. And the thing that really rocked me to my boots, like, target fishing, like I said, I'd sort of come away from that at that point. But when someone tells you that there's a really small lake, I won't say how small it is, but a really small lake that's got 15 to 20 carp in it, they say, and that one carp makes up 50% of the bites. I was like, my ears are going ping, 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 ping. I'm like, I know this carp isn't known about by the greater masses, and if it isn't known about by the greater masses, then it isn't under the pressure that I'm used to seeing. And if it lives in a bomb hole, then I'm going there and catching it. I'm going there and catching it. So my wife was she fell pregnant in the February, and all of my Orient fishing had been devised around the autumn. So she fell pregnant in February. She was due to have the kid in the October, the twins in the October. So I knew Orient was off the menu as such for me that year. And I thought, the guy said to me, this fish got caught one year 4 times in May. I was like, right, okay. So at the time, I wasn't doing the sort of filming. I was more in control of when I had to work and when I don't. Well, now I have to work when Dan says etc., and then I plan my fishing around it. Back then, I was sort of more in control, and basically I said, I'm not working in May. I'm not coming to work at all. Now, what do you mean? I said, I'm going on holiday here and I'm going fishing for 2 weeks. I'm going to go fishing. So at the start of the session, I went with Rich Stewart. Me and Rich Stewart were going to film a DVD together. We were going to sell, like, just do a Darrell Peck video or whatever, and we were going to sell it. And we went to, I'd been given some information, bad information, that there was some real big fish in a lake at Abbey Lakes that didn't get fished. It was a lake they used for shooting. So we went to this lake. There might have been some big fish in it, but I ended up catching a 60-pound grass carp and a couple of 20s. And Rich had only sort of allowed 3 days for filming. He hadn't really sort of set aside real enough time. So after this 3 days filming there, I went on for 2 weeks to Holland. So I stopped at my friend Iron's house, and I had a bivvy boat with me, like packing all of that, which I didn't need for this little lake. So I dropped the bivvy boat off with Iron, and he said, I can't believe you've come all the way to Holland to target a carp. We don't do that here. We pre-bait and we catch what we catch. I said, it got caught 4 times in May, mate. I'll be fine. I'm going to be fine, mate. So, but any lake that's got 15 to 20 carp in it, it's going to be difficult. And my timing, it was really, really cold. And 3 days into the session, I've been but the lake is similar shape to this coffee table. It's round and it's a bomb hole. In the middle, there are features, but features that are still really, really deep. And if you're coming out of winter into spring, realistically, the fish are going to be coming to the shallow water. So my opening game plan was to drive around the lake, look, because I could use the boat, look at the spots, handful of bait, not kilos, handful of baits on all the spots, and watch them. And I ended up catching a 29-pound mirror. Was the first one that I caught. I saw the fish. I went towards the spot, saw it spook off. It like rattled off the spot. I put my rig there and caught it later that day. But that was it. It was a spot that never continued to produce. It was a random bite, one-off chance. That fish had found that patch, come onto it, I caught it. But I was seeing the odd, like the other carp in the lake are tiny. There's a few better ones, but you're talking one monster, few tiny stockies, sprats, almost like roach, and then you've got a couple of better ones, you know, like a couple of normal size carp. And I was seeing these tiny ones flip out, and I was trying adjustable zigs. When you've been on the bank 3 nights with Rich in France, and then I've come to this lake in Holland, and we're getting right to the end of the session. Most people listening to this will have never done a session. They've been to weeks in France, but not many people have done 10, 14, 15 nights on the bank. And I was 13 nights in on this lake, so I'd done 3 nights. So I was 16 nights in on a session. No showers, washing in a bucket. I'd been abusing the beer, you know. I love a beer when I'm fishing, and when it's not happening and there's nothing to do, and it's as difficult as putting your rod on a spot like that from a boat, it's why not? And you just end up getting into a bit of a bad habit of it. And I just remember one day the sun came out in the afternoon, and I just, from freezing cold northeasterly and being horribly cold, and just the boat trips had felt worthless. Suddenly, all the dried reeds from winter started cracking and making noises in the sun, like and I remember as well what really triggered it was a bird, I can't remember if it was a heron or what it was, but a bird swooped low to the surface out in the middle of the lake, and the water erupted like there's a fish high in the water. I was like, bingo, now we've got something to go on, you know. Like, that was my piece of info. It'd been days of inactivity, days of nothing. Let's go and have a look. Went over there, saw a 20-pounder near this reed bed, and as I was tracking around the reeds, I saw one bolt into the reeds in the corner of the lake. And as it bolted into the reeds, there was just this mighty eruption, and I'd bad angling. I was looking the wrong direction, almost run over the 70-pounder, man. I didn't know it at the time, but I'd literally gone on a real tiny bit of throttle, but I was creeping along, looking in the wrong direction, and I must have nearly run it over, because the explosion on the surface was just like, oh no! So let the momentum of the boat just take it on its same course. And once I was sort of 15 yards down the bank, I'd done a Yui, and I'd marked. There was a tiny sort of point of reed sticking out that, as it had happened, I thought, right, I need to get back to that point. When I turn, I need to get back to that point. So when I came back to that point, I saw it. It was, the water wasn't really clear, but it was so high in the water. It wasn't out the water, but it was quite high. Bear in mind, there's one monster in this lake. I saw it. I saw him here, like, here, me to you. I saw him. I was like, that was him. It just like was there, and it went, just dropped into the gloom. I was like, you need to get a rod, Darrell. You need to get a rod now. So I've gone back to the bank, spun up a rig, double balance. Basically, my baits have been getting, there's some sort of larvae in the water. I couldn't tell you what it was, but my baits were getting, my boys were just coming back annihilated. Sometimes coming back with nothing, sometimes just pitted really deeply, sort of, destroyed. So I decided to fish a double balanced tiger nut. So you can't, the water, I guess, at the time was probably about 3 metres, maybe 8-9 foot, something like that. So I've gone back to this little tiny point of reeds. Sort of, there's a big reed bed and a tiny bit that juts out. I remember thinking I need to be two rod lengths off that point. I've got an 8-ounce gripper on and this double tiger on the end. I've sort of lowered it down on the back one. It's like, I was like, that feels all right. So I lifted it up, so I checked it, everything's sort of fine, nothing on the hook. Lowered it back down, bounced it a couple more times. It's gone crack. I was like, I need to check that. I need to lift it up, really paranoid of a super sharpened hook that you're going to dink the hook point. So I lifted it up. It was like absolutely pure, like nothing on the hook. Bear in mind, you bounced it 2 or 3 times, no debris on it. So I lowered it back down again. It went boom, boom, crack. I was like, that's the one. Like 2 handfuls of tigers over it. A few I had some crumbed up activate. You know, to be honest, the crumbed up activate, I threw them over there. But what those bugs, whatever had been eating my bait, in all honesty, probably wasn't there. By the time the carp came, I threw it over. It was a token gesture as such. But I came back to the bank, and I think it was the second from last night. It was the full moon. So the whole trip, I always book my long trips, the full moon, the second from last night at the end, so that I've got it, I've covered it, And the whole build up of the session is hopefully not building up a baited spot, but I'm hoping the information will lead me to the chance on that night. And I remember, like, I put the rod down that spot, and you've nearly run it over once, and then you drove across it, and you're not sure. You don't think, oh my God, it wasn't like I could see the spot, see how it all looked on the bottom. I just dropped it and got a good drop. And
what do you think it looked like, that spot then?
No idea.
No?
No, it was clear. It was just, I just imagine it was like gravel-y, like mud gravel, you know, so not like a big row of stones, but mud with stones
And
amongst
that fish has just cleaned something off.
No, I don't think it was cleaned. I just think it was just, that was the lake bed there.
Was it?
Yeah, I just think that's just how it was. But I remember I woke up, when you've been on a session that long and you've been in the same swim, you've got no change, no company, fishing on your own, you're feeling a bit rotten, a bit run down, not eating good food, you took non-fresh stuff, like, you know, pasta, drinking beer every day, and that, you're going to start to feel a bit ming after that. And I remember at the start of the session, the alarm clock goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning, you jump up like a superhero, like, I'm going to find them today, I'm going to find them. And on this particular morning, I was just too beaten, you know. I woke up deflated that I hadn't caught. I was just like, God, I haven't caught anything. And as you do, you pick up your phone and you start thumbing your news feed. And the first thing I noticed was it was my mum's birthday, and it was May the 11th, the full moon of 2017.
And she passed away.
She'd passed away in the July of 16, so like less than a year ago, sort of just over 6-7 months ago. So like instantly, like, oh, you know, just that little sort of, like, you know, and then it was like, as like literally just as it was like, it was like, did it. And I just remember glancing round, like, and just, it was that rod, you know, the one that I towed over the other side to where it was that fish, and it went doo-doo, and I looked at it, and I saw the spool start unwinding, and I just like, that's the one. It comes out, half the bites in this lake of that fish. I've seen it. It's my mum's birthday. It's that fish, you know. And because I was fishing to the far bank, and there were some features, real deep features, you know, we're talking this lake is very, very deep, tens of metres deep, with some real high features. I didn't dare bend into it because I knew my line was bellying through the deep water like that. So I just let it was still running. I just put 2 fingers on the spool, kicked the boat out into the water, and didn't even bend into it. It was just. Well, I did bend into it, but not like hooped into it. Just wound myself out until in the middle of this small lake. I'm the only one there, and it's flat calm. Once I've got it on the rod length for line, and I'm out in the boat, and it's over the abyss. Like, there's no snags. How can it be? There's like the bottom's a mile away. It's just, and I'm in the middle of the lake controlling where it goes with the engine. I was just like, you can do everything you like, mate, but
you're not going anywhere. You
are the biggest carp I've ever caught in my life, and you're coming in my landing net. And yes, I got him in the landing net. Took him back to the bank, put him in the bag, and made the call to Kevin from Korda, who's he's sort of in charge of the European consultants on the other side of the water. And he was on another guy, Roy Van Steels, it was his first day at Korda, so they were going to shoot like a live feature. They were going to shoot a live feature down just on a canal, hopefully catch maybe some 20s or something. I was like, Kevin, I'm in Holland, mate. Are you? What are you doing in Holland, Darrell? I said, do you know the Black Mirror? Oh yes, I know the Black Mirror. I can tell you, I can find some information for you if that's what you want. I said, actually, mate, I need someone to come and photo this fish. And he was like, you're joking? I was like, no. He said, that's the biggest carp in Holland. I said, yeah, I know. He said, oh, I'll come. And it was 33.6 kilos, 74 pounds.
That was a beast.
Yeah.
Well, we got a picture of that, Toby.
Let me see if I can find
We
it.
have got a picture, but we had a few problems identifying some.
Which one it was?
Well, it was a 71 pound, 70. What was it?
74 pound. Yeah.
You think we would be able to distinguish that? The big brown one, Tobe, isn't it?
Oh, I think I might have.
Yeah.
Go on then, whack it up there.
No,
it's
a mirror.
It won't be that one.
That's the Belgian lake, isn't it?
That was a full moon as well, though. That was the.
Go on, Tobe, have another go. Put your favourite one up there.
It's a mirror.
My favourite one.
Yeah, what's your favourite one?
I'm not even sure if I've sent you a picture of it, to be honest.
Haven't you?
I'm not sure. I can't remember what I sent you, but.
Oh right, okay. Well, we'll.
Let me see what I've got.
Yeah.
Could always have a jump up and see what.
Yeah, we could do an edit later, mate, if you want.
Yeah.
I was going to say, actually, that was a great story and very, very poignant, isn't it? You just wonder what's going on that we don't understand at times, don't you?
Yeah, you have a.
Just to look at your phone though, and then get that is.
Yeah, and you say, like, to be, I hadn't thought of it, prior to that. It's a horrible thing to not realise that it's your mum's birthday, but I was caught up in what I was doing, and you just, you see it, and it's just like, oh, and like a couple of my mum's friends have commented like, miss you so much, and that, and it's just,
It's lovely anyway. It's a lovely memory to have, though, isn't it?
And then, when you catch it, you have to have a little wink at the sky.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, just before we wrap up, do you think we've come to the end of the sort of big fish era a little bit now? With those big old carp, apart from the Burghfield Common.
I think we've come to an end of an era of that.
Yeah.
And the scene, the way I see it, the scene is sort of splitting. Like in the early days, we had these weird foreign fish coming over. Well, not weird. So we had imports coming in, big fish thrown into ponds, and then the big fish community rejecting them, saying they don't mean anything. Like they haven't grown here. It's not what it is. Whereas now the original big fish are dying out. People aren't bringing in big imports, but what they're doing is they're legally, not illegally, they're legally bringing in better strains of carp. So like these Croatians and stuff like that. So what's that lake in Hearn in Peterborough? And the original or the older school community or the Carpy gang,
the Precious gang,
they're rebuffing these. They're saying that they're not as worthy. That I'm on the fair. I'm in the middle. I can see the heritage of the real old school original ones. And how cool they are and how meritorious they are. But I don't agree with the knocking of this. That if you legally buy a smaller carp, I'm not saying like bringing in 50s and 60s, but if you're stocking in, let's say Croatians or whatever, in double figures, mid doubles, even up to 20s, and they go on to be massive in lakes, I think you can definitely say that the original carp are like the Burghfield Common. They're definitely more meritorious, but I don't think it's okay to say that these ones are wrong. I think the scene is confused. Elliot, obviously, who used to work here, he's proper carpy, and I don't think he can see the wood for the tree sometimes now. Like I've just have different opinion. I think I think the scene is confused. Like people let's say like Grenville. These carp, they're Simmons fish. Which some people would say have got a bad reputation, but there was a time when they all went into Horton, when the likes of Terry Hearn and Jim Shelley and everyone, they're fishing for these fish when they were what they were, and then now they're fishing for the underground carpy ones. But what is wrong with somewhere like Grenville? It's in my opinion, it's going to become a super water, like an absolutely.
Are we predicting the next British record is going to come from?
I think it's absolutely insane. Like Bailey caught that 65
well
pounder.
Well done on that one.
And although you can't compare, like some people might disagree, this is only my opinion. I don't think you can compare that fish to the Burghfield Common. I don't think you can take away from it either. It was grown, homegrown, and from this big to a monster. As far as I'm concerned, it's the real deal. It's legit. You can't knock it. Yes, you can say the Burghfield Common is the carp of our generation that's left. It's the number one. But what you can't say is that these ones aren't okay. That's what I'm getting at when I say that some of the guys in the scene are confused. I have a different opinion to them, and they probably have a different opinion to me.
Well, they're not going to have a lot to fish for in the future, though, are they? If it carries on like that, because
no.
Because eventually,
yeah,
you're not gonna be in that position, are you, to fish for those? Darrell, this has been a great podcast. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening to this, because it's been great. It's been a bit of an education as well, and you're far too modest because you've got a little bit of extra, I think. Best of luck with everything with the new one on the way as well.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks for having me.
Darrell Peck, thank you very much.
Cheers.
The Thinking Tackle Podcast.